Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 347. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin, and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
This is the second part of our 7-year anniversary celebration where we're going to continue the Raging Oscars. And basically we start covering everything. It's funny how the second part wound up being longer than the first part. We knew that this was going to be an undertaking. It actually clocks in together, if you put the two episodes together, at 5 hours of podcasting. And we had a natural breaking point when we recorded the first part. We actually recorded this in one sitting, but we had a natural breaking point that it felt like we could do one episode here and another episode there and get back to you guys in a time where I've got report cards coming up this week, so it actually fits out really well for us, so we don't have any interruption for you guys on the content you're receiving for us, especially with Super Show and things coming up. So I hope you guys are enjoying this one. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, this is a really cool Superman month, especially with the film coming up this summer. You can pre-order this month, Superman Unchained #1. This is a $4.99 book. It's 50% off, only $2.49. This is Scott Snyder, Jim Lee. And you got to also remember that Batman Superman #1 comes out this month. They've got a $4.99, that's that digital combo pack, 40% off, only $2.99. For $1 cheaper, if you don't want the digital end of it, you can get the paper comic for $1.99. So it's a great opportunity to jump on board those books. They've also got the various variant covers that go along with them, and there's a ton of variant covers that are like tied into the 75th anniversary of Superman. So make sure to be checking those books out. It's really just a cool time, I think, to be a Superman fan this year. Over at InStockTrades.com, continuing the Superman love, they've got The Adventures of Superman, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez hardcover. This is a 360-page book. It's $39.99 regularly, 50% off, only $19.99. It is like filled with not only the amazing artwork of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, but just some of the top writing talent as well. This is a great opportunity to pick up just a master of the craft. And InStockTrades.com is really just your source for hardcovers and trade paperbacks, any collected edition needs. Be sure to shop over there. And remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. As Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast, as we wrap up our Raging Oscars, please remember, we will go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics for, probably most, if not all, of the DC Universe. So, please remember this and be wary and warned, because we want to make sure you all enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Can Batman escape? One hint, the worst is yet to come.
James, we're back again with part 2 of the Raging Oscars, and we're going to start with the Mystic line. And Jim, why don't you kick us off with the Mystic line and where you started off? What were your thought process with that?
Well, actually, I'm continuing on how I really didn't look at an individual title as opposed to concept characters and whatnot. But for me, I'm kicking off Mystic. My number 5 spot was Amethyst and Sword of Sorcery. Yes, I know I mispronounced sword. I did that intentionally. Figured I'd beat y'all to the punch.
Was that to hide your stumbling with amethyst, or?
Yes, it was. Oh, come on, you had to try, but
that's actually just to say that's my number. It's funny, not knowing what we were going to talk about. That was my number 5. That and Beowulf, obviously.
Yeah, and when the character was first announced and everything was, said what they were going to do with her and whatnot, I honestly, my outward reaction was, that's very interesting. Yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen there. That little voice inside my head was laughing, saying, no, I'll give it a read for the podcast, and then I will drop the title. after that first issue, I was pretty much locked into this title. I thought this was a great story. I love the development of the character, the rapid development of the character, but it didn't seem rushed. And then the chaos of her being thrust in this whole universe and having to completely create a new world out of nowhere. And within a couple issues, I had good solid grasp of this universe. This was just a well-written series, and this is one where I hope the character finds life after the book is canceled. Yeah. I don't want to see it canceled. This was one that I was like, oh man, there's so much they could do with this character, that there's a lot of depth to her that I didn't think was initially going to be there. And so I'm greatly and wonderfully surprised, and I hope we get more from her.
Yeah, it was one of those books. I agree with you. Like, I was excited because I've heard so many fans talk about how they love Amethyst. Well, I never read the old Amethyst. So I saw her in like crossovers and stuff like that, but I never had a chance to actually read Amethyst, her own title. So it's great to see her here, and I really found myself, like, I was intrigued going in, but then I found that, like, it was not what I expected, and I really loved this high school kid kind of being thrust into this world that, like, was going on behind the scenes that she didn't know about. And I really was into her whole world, and I loved how she was pulled into Justice League Dark. Beowulf was a great action story in the back, where to the point where I'm like, yeah, Beowulf is cool as can be, but he's like Wolverine without a filter. And I think about the introduction of Wolverine, how dangerous he was. This guy could slice your head off at a wrong cough. And I loved that about him. It was just, it was a great balance of a unique book that is everything I love about titles like that, where you've got two different story arcs that are kind of set in the same sort of universe. I'm not saying that they were interconnected, but, it was that same kind of sword and sorcery universe that was set up there, and I really enjoyed that. I'll go to my disappointment. My disappointment was the loss of books like Resurrection Man, Sword of Sorcery, and Frankenstein. I'm glad they tried to experiment with all three of these titles, because I think, they've had different longevities for all of them, but they've been really enjoyable reads for me. And comics are about experimentation. And I'll take a 6-issue miniseries, if that's what a series turns into, where it has an ending. And that's really important to me. The arc has to end. You have to give these books a conclusion. I understand sales numbers drive all these things. It's one of the business end of comics is something that we as fans often have the most trouble with. I tend to be realistic about that and realize, okay, sometimes the business end of it gets in the way of a book that I'm really enjoying and the book gets canceled. I like that, that I'm understanding that part of it now. But the one irritation I have when a book is canceled, if they end it without at least ending the arc, oh, does that irritate me. The theme with the New 52 so far has seemed to be at least end the book with an arc ending. I think that's critical because if you want fans to try new titles, I get excited for new announcements of the New 52 because I know if I try that experiment, I'm going to get an ending to it. It might be an ending that leaves the characters open-ended for creators to use in the future, like you're mentioning, Jim, where you hope they pop up somewhere else. But at least there's an ending of some sort. The arc feels like it's closed. There's questions that maybe still need to be answered and stuff. Fine. That happens with serialized storytelling all the time, unless you kill off everybody when you end their title. And I don't want to see that. But at least the current arc you're on, let the creators know that, hey, this is where your book's ending, and let them give us a satisfying end. It builds confidence in the brand. It builds confidence in the creators. And it also builds confidence on taking the risk to jump on something because you're going to at least get a complete story arc. You have to do that. I'm going to touch on something later in this episode where I'm irritated that it's not ending. And, or it's not coming to a conclusion. And I understand, again, this is also about sales numbers, but you can't do that. It builds kind of a lack of confidence in trying out these things. I'm glad that at least all of these, they've set up this plan with the New 52. When they try these new series out, creators know that you're going to get this amount of time. And it's sad, it's disappointing, but I've loved all of the experiments that have gone on the New 52. It can't always be about Superman, Batman, and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman. It's got to be about some of these other characters that are really cool concepts that go back through DC's history that creators have tried that had, hardcore fan bases, and they're like, you know what, let's try it now and see what happens with it. I want that. That's a part of comics. That experimental nature gives it kind of an independent feel at times. You need that kind of thing going on. I love independent comics because they get crazy. They try new things. The New 52 has done that. And some of those books have been, really some of my favorites along the way. Sword of Sorcery is one of those where I'm with you. I was shocked at how much I love that out of the starting gate. I don't regret buying it. I'm so glad that it's ending like it feels like it was a miniseries. Did I want more from it? Sure. But at least I feel like this is going to be satisfying in the sense that I got this mini out of it. And if in the future, if they announce something else with it, I'm going to jump on it right away. And, I hope these characters appear elsewhere. It's really, really cool that they took this chance with this, and I think it's neat. What do you got next?
My number 4 is Frankenstein.
Oh, my. Wait, did you, come and steal from my computer? I swear to God, it's the same thing I've got down here. Go ahead. I think this is hysterical because this shouldn't happen.
Well, you think about this guy is wonderful. This sense of honor, his sense of code, what we got from his own title. I really wished, it would survive. I wish they would bring it back because it gives a continuation of the character. It gives further development of him as well as the monsters that were around him. I thought that was just a great group and a great usage of them. I'm ecstatic that he's continuing on in Justice League Dark. So the character is not completely dead. He's still out there. He's still being used, but when he was in his own title, he got more screen time. When you're in this group, you have to share the dynamic. And it's part of writing for a group dynamic that we're going to not have it. He's going to be less of a character, more of a part of the story. He's not going to be the main character. He's not going to be the driving force behind the story. Now, because Frank is a great character, a great hero, he's going to have some really cool moments still. So I'll still get a Frankenstein fix, but I am losing something by having him part of a group. And he was a really big surprise for me that he was neat in Seven Soldiers. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And I didn't know what to expect, but I gave it a try. And just like with Amethyst, I was like, I wasn't really thinking too long term with Frank, but once I started reading it, I'm like, man, this is a great character. We can't lose this guy.
I loved that he was a part of that crossover with the rot and everything that was going on. I thought that was really, really great to have him with Animal Man and Swamp Thing. It fit. I love that they gave him an issue afterwards to kind of show us that everybody's back, and that was something that kind of closed off with that storyline. I'm with you. Father Time, his relationship with Nina, I thought was great. Yeah. That built over time. Shade, the Creature Commandos. It's a great cast. It was a book that, even when it shifted from writers, we had Matt Kint jump on board, it just kept this nice flow going of a really terrific book. Another great example of where, do I care if these titles don't make it? No, try it. This is one that I'm with you is a pleasant surprise for me. I really love this because it was something that went back, yes, as you mentioned, to Seven Soldiers. And I like that, we saw him appear in Flashpoint. They gave him a shot in the New 52. He's going to continue on in Justice League Dark. He's a character that I really found as interesting. I find him more interesting in Justice League Dark because he had this great series leading up to it. If you didn't read this book, I can't recommend picking it up more highly because it's worth picking the character up, especially if you're reading Justice League Dark right now. You're like, I never read Frankenstein, but I'm digging him in Justice League Dark. It's a great prequel to his appearances in Justice League Dark. And I can't, like I said, I can't recommend picking this character up more highly because I really enjoyed the book. I'm sad it's gone, but I'm glad I had a chance to read it. What was your number 3?
My number 3 is Demon Knights. Now, my number 3 and my number 2 kept going back and forth. So I went with Demon Knights for number 3 spot. One, because it had some great moments for me. And it was something that, I'm really glad the book is continuing and it continues growing strong, and they keep each story arc developing on what was done before. But those hell scenes were absolutely wonderful. Whether it's Vandal Savage enjoying being tortured by his ancestors and getting humor out of the fact that I made your life miserable. That's wonderful. Or whether it was Tristan being able to survive and attack while in hell because she had drinking from the Grail. She had the power in her. And I thought that was I never even once thought about that what would happen if she was in hell because she drank from the Holy Grail. She drank from the cup of Christ. She's got, right there, the immortality in her. And I thought that was a neat concept that I never even thought, and I was glad they pulled it out. This is another one of those titles that can continue on and grow, and you could see a lot of them are immortal, so they'll be around present day. I want to see Demon Knights go through the years and actually show them present day what they're doing.
My number 3, and this is where we start to veer off, Justice League Dark. The Nick Necro storyline was totally a winner for me. Anytime you've got two houses chasing each other. I mean, I love the wacky magic world. I loved the Zero issue where you had that great building of the relationship between Constantine and Zatanna, that there was a history there. And as with anything that goes on with Constantine, it's a bitter history where you feel for him and yet you want to punch him in the head. And it fits, to me, Constantine from Vertigo. It was big, it was epic, and it felt like it had a huge impact on the characters. I loved the bringing in of Timothy Hunter, all that kind of crazy stuff that this series has done. It's a beautiful book. I've loved the artwork on it. I've loved the writing. It's highly recommended reading if you're not picking up Justice League Dark.
I'm laughing because my number 2 that I kept going back and forth was Justice League Dark for everything you said. And it was actually the houses chasing each other, the introduction of magic, and especially Constantine-Zatanna relationship is what kicked it to the number 2 spot for me. I've always thought Z was a cool character, and I was glad to see she had a home and everything was going. But this really has kind of escalated her, from, just my attachment, my growth, and just the love of the character has completely escalated through Justice League Dark. And it's great to see her as the hero. It's great to see her in this universe, and just her and Constantine. That is just a wonderful mix, a wonderful, matching up. And I tell you, I'm like, dang, this is a great combo. It's one of the reasons, this book has got me picking up the Constantine solo. It's got me looking at some of the his other works and just getting a feel of who the guy is, and just this has been an absolute complete shock, surprise, but a wonder for me because again, Justice League Dark. I'm like, what? Come on, what kind of name is that? And I love the fact that they even commented on the fact that Constantine's like, well, what kind of name is that? I laughed out loud when they had the same acknowledgement of this is kind of really this is the name you're giving this team. It was, this has been a great, great run for me.
My number 2 is Swamp Thing. And what can I say about this book? Amazing art, Scott Snyder. The tragic love story moved me. We see two characters choose responsibility to balancing the world over the chance to be together. The story of Abigail and Alec was a home run for me. It was hard not to put this in as my number 1, because Swamp Thing's been one of those things I've had an interesting history with. I've read various runs of Swamp Thing. I've liked the character. I don't think I've ever had a strong and rich enough history of it to develop the kind of love for it that so many other people have. This has made me go back and start getting the Alan Moore hardcovers that have been released, because I just want more of the history of Swamp Thing. I think it's really cool. I've been digging very much the relationship between him and the Abigail Arcane and Arcane in general, Anton Arcane. And I love the kid. I loved how this led to a crossover. The Zero issue was fantastic. It's just been every issue of this series has not missed a beat. And it's unique, it's different, it's unlike anything else that I've read. And one of the strengths of the New 52 for me has been they've taken titles like this and made it relevant to the current DC. It was a Vertigo book before, very successful at various runs as a Vertigo book. And they said, let's take this concept and bring it back to the DC universe and show a different side of the DC universe. Example of an experiment that was a success. It's been a great book. It's been a great read. I hope it continues to be successful. I hope this book continues to have a nice long run. I know that's going to have a creative shift, but for right now, I'm really digging Swamp Thing. I'm super excited for where it's going to go from here. It's been a great book.
My number 1 is Swamp Thing. Especially this end of this Rot story. It was absolutely touching and sad and wonderful that Abby and Alec can't be together. This is how you show the death of a hero. This right here. Both of these two are solid heroes in my mind, and both of them had to give up, love, give up life, give up everything for the greater good. And I loved seeing just how this went through, and the fact that their final resting place is in the grove, and it is together. And I love that final scene where the plants just kind of grew over their bodies. And in my head, there's still maybe somewhere down the line a future for them somehow. Maybe through the mystics and through the green, through the variations in the universe, these two kids will someday be together again. Or on some other level they'll be together. I don't know how they're going to play it out, but this has been an absolute wonder for me. And this is a character that I had absolutely no... If you think back to when we first started talking Swamp Thing, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know about it. I was kind of trying to get the groove, trying to get the understanding. It went from that to being now my number one in this line. You know, it's this whole... And it was... And I can even say it wasn't just the big crossover. Before the big crossover, I was pretty locked in on the Swamp Thing. I was locked into his story and where he was going. But this Rot story that they did was absolutely wonderful. And especially that ending, man. I will admit, I got a little choked up over the ending. You know, it gave me a true emotional response. And when you have that type of skills and that type of story that's coming out from a creative team, you just got to say, bravo, bravo.
My number one is Animal Man. Jeff Lemire, Buddy, Ellen, Maxine, Cliff, the grandmother, the Rot, the red, the green. I love the story where you've got, you know, Buddy finds out that he was not meant to be the Avatar. You know, he was a placeholder. His daughter is meant to be the Avatar. Having to take on the cat, having to take on the role of protecting her. The son, who is like, all of this is going on around him, and his younger sister is I recognize this. Just a backstory with me. My father and my dad both love golfing. They love the same kind of sports. I've never been a sports nut. They connect over that. I was so connecting, and my dad's been a great father to me, so this isn't a knock on him, but you know, you feel kind of left out when you don't have those same kind of interests. I so related to Cliff seeing what was going on with Buddy and Maxine and feeling like he was left out and wanting to be that person, wanting to be a part of all that. I thought that was a very true and honest story. There was something to connect with this family that I think has always been interesting. It's been fun. It's been creepy. It's been dark. It's, you know, it's hit really emotional places. And you talk about tearjerkers and Swamp Thing. Amen. 100% I agree with you. The ending of this with that arc, tearjerker as well. And go ahead.
That's one of the things that I got really angry over the death. You know, over Cliff's death. That really angered me. And I gotta tell you, kudos are definitely the reason I got that anger, and it's very similar to what I had with Damien when Damien died, because I had so many stories in my head what Cliff was going to go through, what kind of stuff they could do with his sister becoming the Avatar of Red, and his dad's a hero. Maybe they're going to do something there, and it was just so much that the connection that I had with Cliff, now I've had time to work through it. You know, when I first was creating my list, there was a lot of raw red emotion that was just, burning, because I was like, what? You can't kill off this kid. This is a great character. What are you doing? And there was a lot of venom that was just flying off. And when you get such a strong emotional response, it's because of great writing. It's because of a great creative force behind it. And I'm sitting there saying, I wish they hadn't killed off the kid. But as I'm saying that, I'm like, the reason I wish they didn't kill him off was because it was such a great story.
Yeah. And I want to see how the family deals with that, because it's going to be a real family dealing with the real loss. And I think that's something in comics that can be helpful. And I'm with the way this magic world works, I'm not sure if Cliff's permanently dead or not. I don't know how that's going to play out. But for me, I'm anxious to see where the story goes from here. I'm with you as a huge emotional resonance with what happened with that. And it's a show that in this world, there is loss. And how do you deal with that? I think it's something that's important for us as people to learn how to deal with loss. And sometimes through stories, it can do that. And to me, it's a story that's going to matter. There's going to be a reason for this, whatever happens with it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Jeff Lemire handles that, because he does it so well in Sweet Tooth that I'm looking forward to seeing that here. My biggest surprise was Phantom Stranger. I had a spot for this in my top 5, but it was more appropriate here because this was one of those, you mentioned earlier a title, Sword of Sorcery, where you were kind of like behind the scenes kind of going, I don't know. Phantom Stranger, I was kind of that way. I've always seen him as a guest star. I've always seen him as somebody who kind of comes in. I'm like, what are you going to do to sustain a title with this guy? Reading the first issue was the exact opposite for me. I was like, oh my gosh, how into this I am. I love that this guy, first of all, is Judas, and that the coins are all about him having to pay for his crimes, having to deal with some form of quest for redemption for the wrongs that he did in betrayal. But he's doomed to constantly betray others. And I love the issue with the Spectre and what happened there. I love that he's got a family and a life that's outside of being Phantom Stranger. How hard must it be to balance these horrid things that he has to go through as Phantom Stranger and deal with a family and try to be a dad on a real level and connect with them on a real level? That family's very important to him, but he's even asked partway through one of the issues, what happens when you've got to betray them? You know, and how dark that gets with his world. And he's protesting against it and even saying to himself, I don't want to have to face it, but yet deep down knowing I might have to do that, and what happens then? And it was just something that I really love about this book. It's edgy. There's 2 issues right now that friends of the show, Gene Hahn, Art Lion, are doing the artwork on, which is amazingly stellar. This is a book, though, since the first issue, I've been really digging. It's very different. It's very unique. And I hope this book's getting a readership, because it's like a lot of these titles with DC that they're experimenting and putting out. It's taking a concept, what worked from the past, reimagining in a way that works today. The whole Judas tie, I think, is fantastic. I really am digging this book a lot. I don't know if you're in the same place as I am with this book, but I'm loving this.
Oh, God, I am absolutely. And as you're talking, I'm nodding my head saying, yes, I agree. This was an absolutely fabulous title. That, again, great location for it, by the way, as the surprise, because when I was first creating this, I'm like, I'm running out of room, and I didn't know where to throw it. And it was in my head, it was kind of like a number 6 spot. But in reality, yeah, you could say this was definitely a surprise where it came from and everything that's played out, because I didn't see any of that coming. This was wonderful swerve and storytelling and beautiful artwork.
You know, it was funny. I was going to put it in do a tie thing on number 5 with it, and I'm kind of like, in its own way, I feel like this book, as it develops, is going to wind up somewhere on my top 5, because I feel like it's already there. I'm not there. I don't know where to put it yet. So that's where it, really, to me, it fits more of the surprise category there, because I really don't want to say anything that would diminish it, because I love the title that much. So that's why I ended up, it's funny how, I use that surprise spots in different ways. And for this one, it was really with a title where I'm like, I don't want to diminish it at all, because it's important to me. And I think that's something that needs to come across in it, and that's why I ended up putting that there. Young Justice?
Young Justice.
So where did you start off with this?
Well, I started off with number 5 being Bunker. I don't think this will be a surprise to anybody, because every time we've talked Teen Titans, we've both talked about how great of a character he is and just how much fun he is to have around. But I got to give this guy credit in my top 5 as being a character that I was a little bit surprised that they were going to be introducing so many new characters into the Teen Titans. Like, you got a solid line of the Teen Titans. Why do you need to introduce new characters? And I am so happy they did with him, because he gives you these great innocence moments, these great moments of humor that we used to get from Beast Boy. And he's kind of bringing that element to the Teen Titans. He's bringing a very family feel to it. He's one of those characters that I want to see him around for a while. I want to see the character develop as a hero, get some recognition, and just get some true respect and cred, because this is a great character and a great usage of introducing a new character to give some excitement, some energy to a team.
I'm going to start with my disappointments and lead it into number 5, if I could do it that way. My disappointments are really, I'm sad over the loss of Ravagers, Legion Lost, Blue Beetle. I love teen characters. They bring a sense of wonder and hope that some of the older characters can't have, because they kind of battle-worn, which I think is appropriate. I like seeing kind of that go. I hope more books like this will be given a shot down the road, because I really think that they're the next generation of heroes. So we need to see more of these characters developed because I like those kind of tiers in the DC universe, where the current teens will eventually become a little older, then there'll be a new generation of younger kids. I like that. It's something in DC I've always dug. So I think that that's something that needs to be richly developed, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that because those are titles that I've been really digging. My number 5 spot went to Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle is one of those titles that I beat my head against the wall with. As a reader, I always enjoy Blue Beetle. It's a good book. It's a good concept. I always enjoy it. I feel that there's a readership, an untapped readership for Blue Beetle. I've always hearkened him to being a character that has the potential to be a great video game. I think he would work well. Because, I've seen him on TV, when he's been on, Brave and the Bold and stuff like that. I've seen when they've done CGI with him and used him on, more like a live-action type of thing. He's a character that just looks like he'd be really cool in a video game as the main character, where you get to use the Scarab, and whip in and out of the Scarab and having cool ways of doing that. I look at games like Assassin's Creed I was playing, the new Assassin's Creed, where he's able to, morph in the downloadable content into a wolf and into a bird. And I think about, do the same thing, do the click on the controller, and all of a sudden you're morphing into the Blue Beetle costume. Seeing that, feeling that creep factor of the Scarab opening up. I just think it's one of those characters that then, really working this as a digital title that people can link into, downloadable content from the game would then link into the comic book. I don't think comic companies are taking enough of advantage of the opportunities of storytelling through a digital comic book leading into a video game and back again. With Warner having the opportunity to link more of their video games with their comics, they aren't using it enough. I'm not saying I want all the video games linked with comics. I don't want to necessarily see that. But I think Blue Beetle as a concept would work as a digital comic book game link in a way that'd be a lot of fun to read his backstory, his introduction with his characters. Kind of like we're liking about that Arrow comic. You know what I mean? I think he's one of those characters that I just think would work that way. So it's funny. I fit in my number 5 spot because I really like the concept. I've always liked reading him. It's never been one of my favorite books. So, I'm not going to put it in that spot, but it's always been a middle book. And what I mean by a middle book is I would never drop it in a million years. It was never a chore to read it. I've always enjoyed it. But it's never been one of my top 5 books either. But it's a great read, and I've never regretted reading it. He's a fun character. He's kind of like DC Spider-Man to me. I like him because he's kind of a break from certain other types of characters. There's a unique place for him. He's a character that I want to keep going. I never have wanted to see his book end. I'm sad this book's ending because I like it. It's just been one of those, it's been kind of in that place. And I feel like I'm not necessarily the audience they should be seeking for Blue Beetle. I feel like he's a breakout character that would really hit a teen crowd, hit a young crowd. He's got some cool things about him. That's why I go to the video game thing. I really think he's a breakout video game character that really has the potential to be a comic book video game link. And I would love to see more experiments like that done, where you're getting people reading comics and doing some things with a character like this. So it's why I put it in my 5 spot, because I've really got a passion for the character in a unique way that doesn't fit other characters, because I feel like it's a great creation that's untapped. I'm glad to see him in Threshold, but I feel like there's more to him. And there's more opportunities for him. I feel he's really an untapped character. I really do. His potential hasn't been fully realized because it's a great concept.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about the ending of some of these titles. Especially Blue Beetle. That was one of the things that I was kind of really, I was angry about. But I just want more Blue Beetle. I want more Jaime. It's not just about the character, because in Threshold we're going to get Blue Beetle, and Jaime's in there, but I think if he's back on Earth, you get his supporting cast, you get his family, you get all of that, the really cool stuff that makes him a great character and a great title, and I really want that to come back. I want to see him back on Earth. I want to see him if anything, let's throw him with the Teen Titans. He'll fit with that group. I want the character not to go away. And it's, same thing with, my number 4 spot was Ravengers, because it was a title. I was like, man, there's so much cool stuff they can go with this. There's so much they could do with these characters in this title that I was like, when I first heard that it was ending, I'm like, no, you can't end this title. This is a great title. Why are you getting rid of it? And, then I read an issue where Ridge may be dead. He may not be. I'm not sure yet. The final scene is Deathstroke killing him possibly, or who knows what he's doing. And I'm like, no, come on. That's a great character. And he just became a little kid again. Don't kill him off now. Give me more stories with this guy. I want to see again. It's that I want to see him as the little kid, then turn back into Ridge and be Ridge, and then go back to being a kid. And just there's so much you can do with these characters. There's so much just neat stories that are out there that haven't been created yet that we could really get to enjoy. And I am worried that it's. I understand the business side of it. I understand that, but there's still I don't know. It's a tough one. It's one of those things where I can get emotional and I can get a connection to the character. And anytime I get this solid emotion, anytime I get this, when I actually can get angry at losing a character, losing a title, that tells you that they did something right there. They reached the chord and they reached an emotional connection. And I can't be the only person that felt this. And I wish we could keep these characters around. I wish everything could keep going on, and hopefully these characters will fall in that category of gone but not forgotten. They'll come back some other way.
I'm just going to say that's my number 2 right now, and then when we get to number, we'll kind of do what we did when we previously done this and kind of skip to that, because I really liked Ravagers a lot. It had a lot of the stuff that I've always dug from Gen 13. Especially when they did that Worldstorm reboot. I got really into the whole Gen 13 concept. I read some old Gen 13. I've always been into that kind of vibe since that. I went back and read some of the old stuff as well from Wildstorm. And there's things that I really liked about that. These characters, I would love to see, very similar to what you're saying, continue on in some capacity somewhere. Ridge, I'm with you. Wow, did I love him. I love the use of Beast Boy in this one. I love Terra. The whole team, I think it's been great that they weren't just magically a team after all this. When you come from a place where you're experimented on, and one of your lead people was posing, as working there, who do you trust? And that would be hard to instantly come together. You're on the run. You're on the run from people some of whom you may have trusted there or thought you could trust. You've got a person like Ridge who was a part of them, but then decided to turn and go with you. So how do you know who to trust and who to stand by? That was one of the things I thought was the coolest thing about the book. I like when people aren't magically a team, but they do come together because of the fact that it's about survival. And alone, you're in danger. So even when they walk away from each other, they can't help but do that. I love the brother and sister duo. Everything was really great about this book, and it was something that it made my number 2 spot because I loved its tie with Superboy. I loved the crossover with Legion Lost. I liked when the books were together. I liked when the books split off. I liked that it was common to see these characters guest star in each other's books because they have that relationship that came from Harvest. And it's something that I didn't know. It made that whole universe kind of feel cohesive to me. And I know sometimes people get crossovered out. I liked the way that these books, even if you weren't reading the crossovers, I didn't ever feel like I had to go read an issue of Superboy to understand what's going on in Ravagers. These were titles that I think did very well on their own of developing the characters, but I felt like they interconnected in a way that made the book more relevant. I don't know, what they need to do to take some of these teen books and hit the right target audience for them, but I think this is another book that had a potential audience that is outside of the current comic book community. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more reaching out beyond the comic book audience. So titles like this don't have to get canceled because it was a really cool concept. And I put it in my number 2 spot because I really liked it that much. It was a really, really cool book. Where'd you have next?
Well, my number 3 spot is Cassie. With changes they made to Wonder Woman. Changes they made to Wonder Girl. I was a little bit. I don't know. I was a little bit thrown initially. Like, she's not connected to Wonder Woman. There's not that. And I was like, okay, where are you going with her? What are you going to do with her? And just how they first introduced her, I was like sitting back on, okay. But as they started fleshing out the character, again, it was one of those things where it made sense how she was reacting to them. That she wouldn't be all like, hey, let's go, buddies. No, she's going to be a little bit concerned. She's going to be a little bit nervous and saying, okay, I'm not going to be completely trusting with you. I'm going to see what happens first. And then they started delving deeper into the armor and just her backstory. And as the pieces started unfolding, everything made sense to the character, and you're like, this is a great character. This is a great hero. And with any really great character and great hero, they're laying down future story arcs, and they're planning out, we've got some long-term thinking, some long-term processing that could happen. I geeked out over the potential romance angles and moments that she had with Tim, and also the romance angles she kind of had with Connell. I thought, I was like, yay! I want to see it. Now, it doesn't need to happen like this week or this month, but the fact that they've alluded that there's the possibility, they've kind of laid the groundwork, they've kind of teased and hinted that something could happen. I was glad to see that. It was something I was like, okay, they're thinking what they're doing with this character. They're making her a real character of substance. She's not just background. She's not just a part of the team. She's her own hero. And I think that's the key that you need in all of these Titans characters. You need to have, their own individual identity, their own individual strength.
My number 4 was Fury of Firestorm. And this has been one of those books that I've really enjoyed all the way through. It's been an interesting journey because of the creative shifts and the direction shifts with the book. But what it has about it that I've really always liked, I'm a big fan of both Ronnie Raymond, because I loved Ronnie Raymond growing up, and Jason Rusch. Ronnie was one of those cool characters that I remember him from, various crossovers when I was growing up as a kid. I always loved the look of Firestorm. I read some issues of Firestorm. I never had a big enough budget to read a ton of it, but every time I read Firestorm, every time I saw appearance of Firestorm, I really liked his power set. I liked his appearance. I liked the relationship of him and the professor. Then we had the reboot, and that really, it hit a point where Jamal Igle took over and they reimagined the costume. Jamal Igle took over on art, and they reimagined the costume. And I was already reading the title and really digging it. And Jamal took over. He did this great. I've still got it sitting on my wall. I became a fan of his artwork through his work on Firestorm, and just really got into the character of Jason Rusch, his relationship with his dad. The cool thing when they did this relaunch was they embraced both fan bases. And they said, let's bring Ronnie and Jason in. Let's bring their families in. And let's give them each a power set, and let's explore this concept of their emotional rage because of their power set explodes into this character fury. And I wanted to see where that was going to go. So then they did a creative shift. And it was one of those books that survived, in my mind, it survived a creative shift. Because I was already digging what was going on. I was interested in where it was going to go. I don't pretend to know, and I never ask what goes on behind the scenes. I kind of like some of that. I think there's a certain privacy to that I respect as a reader. I don't know what went on behind the scenes that caused all the creative shifting that happened with that title, but they did kind of a soft reboot of it where it was the same continuity with the same characters, but now they formed together in more of a traditional Firestorm package with Jason being in the background and Ronnie being in the forefront, and it was more like a traditional look of Firestorm. And yet we still had all of the history that had happened so far in the New 52 with these characters, which was a good move. And I've been really enjoying that book. It's been a good read. Has it been a top of the stack read for me? No. But it's been a really good read that I've been really digging. I've been into the character. I want to see more from him. So I want more from him in the DC universe moving forward, because I think it's a great concept. I think they've done a good job of pulling what works from Firestorm into this title since the beginning. And I think he's another one that I think is a unique character that can develop a fan base that I don't think has been tapped yet. And that book needs kind of that push. The concept needs that kind of push. And it's funny with the Young Justice, that's kind of like going to be my ongoing theme, where there's a lot of titles that I feel like, they're missing that fan base because they're good. They're good books. And I don't think they've reached their target audience yet, but I'm really digging Firestorm, and that was my number 4. Where'd you go from here?
Well, my number 2 is Red Robin. but it's actually Red Robin and Teen Titans. Because when I first started reading the Teen Titans book, I was thinking, okay, this is Tim's book. I wasn't thinking of it as Teen Titans. I was thinking of this is Red Robin. And because I was just so happy to see that I was getting my Tim. I was getting the character that I absolutely loved. And I was like, yes, this is great. We didn't lose him. Just because he's not, right now, Batman's sidekick, we still didn't lose this character. We still didn't lose anything that I absolutely loved about the character. Like, yay, and I was very happy. And then as the title is going on, as Teen Titans is growing, I'm getting those bonds with those characters. I'm getting the bonds with the rest of the team. And I'm seeing the growth of everybody in connection with Tim, and connection on their own. And this was something I was like, you know what? This was a great usage of Red Robin. This was a great usage of Tim. And even within the DC universe, this was a great thing for Bruce to actually do. This was really good planning on Bruce's part, and I'm very happy how this played out. The fact that, when there was always a question, was there a previous Teen Titans before? What was going on? Did they not have one? What did, Dick Grayson do? There was always that kind of question and fuddle and whatnot. Well, right now, it doesn't matter to me. This is the Teen Titans. This is the team. This was the purpose behind, Bruce said, okay, Tim, you're ready. I need you to keep an eye on these teen heroes. I need you to do this, and giving Tim the task to handle it makes perfect sense. Everything is going through, and this, again, is a title that I'm so absolutely happy with because this is about heroes. This truly is a hero book. It's funny to call a book Teen Titans, but for me, they are the Titans. They're not kids. There's going to be some story arcs. There's going to be some stuff of them dealing with the position they're in, but, you are getting a solid hero story, and that's always been something I always wanted to make sure I get from my Teen Titans books, that they don't lose the fact that, what they have to do. And it's been just an absolute joy, and I'm very, very happy with where Teen Titans is going and looking forward to futures.
My number 3 was Legion Lost. My love for this book, it has Wildfire, who's my favorite Legionnaire. But one of the great things about this book is, and what I think works with the Legion concept for me, is the interpersonal relationships of the whole team. From who is the leader to secrets being kept and how the team deals with that. These are true friendships, and in true friendships, insecurities will rise from time to time. And you see people work through those insecurities, even in the relationship between Drake and Dawnstar, where the two of them, he was dealing with the fact that, was she falling for somebody else, and how does he feel about that being an energy being? And, to his death / rebirth, being saved again, which you have no idea how I was sweating bullets when that happened to him. I love this book. I think it's been a great read. I'm sorry that it's gone, but I've loved the read of it, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with these Lost Legionnaires. I really liked the concept in the title from the beginning, that they had to rethink how they operate because of the fact they didn't have certain power sets with them. And, what was like Tyrock. I thought Tyrock really shined as taking on a leadership role. But I like that Timberwolf and him were butting heads over that from time to time. And that, to me, it felt like a real, like any friendship group where you have such varying and extreme personalities. We know that. I mean, we've got wonderful friends, but there's some very differing personalities in our friendship group, and that will cause headbutting and things from time. Imagine if, like, our friends, people we grew up with, became a superhero team. It would look very much like that. and I really like that. I like that it's not all clean. There's insecurities in there, but there is a code, a heroic code to them. I love this, like the origin of Timberwolf coming through in this whole thing. Every step and every phase of this series, I thought was just a great exploration of Legionnaires. And I really enjoyed the ride. Gates, I thought, was an interesting character. The secrets part, I thought, was really interesting. Who was keeping secrets from who knew what? Sleeper agents being a part of the team, from Chameleon Girl and stuff like that. I mean, it was just really kind of a cool, having to make a decision, am I a Legionnaire or am I a part of this? I liked how it tied into Captain Atom on certain levels, where we saw things that happened towards the end. tie into what happened with Captain Atom when we saw him appear in other comics afterwards. I like that all of that kind of paid off and they didn't throw out the window that great Captain Atom series. And I would have never expected it to pop back in that way, and I thought that was really neat. So that was my number 3.
Yeah, I'm very sad to see Legion Lost go. When I looked at the 2 Legion titles, I enjoy Legion of Superheroes. I think it's a great title, and I get everyone's love for the title. But there was something about Legion Lost, and a lot of the stuff you said about how they had to change, how they had to adjust, they had to change their modus operandi, they had to change, they had to improvise, adapt, and overcome. I thought that was just a great usage of heroes and a great usage of the way they were and who they are. And I love the fact that the way they ended that series, they're still here. They didn't go back to the future. They're still lost in time. So there's a good chance they can pop up somewhere else. And in the Legion title, they're listed as the Lost Legionnaires. They have the statues for them. They have the tribute to their lost comrades, who are gone. And I love seeing just that whole connection between the 2 different titles as well as a connection with the universe. So in my head, I think we could still get another Legion Lost story. We could get more title, usage of them in the actual Legion title, which would be wonderful if they make it back to the future. But if they stay in the past, that's a whole nother story. I'm like, okay, this is all right. I'm okay with this. So it was one of those where I was sad to see it go, but I got that full story. I got the story they told, and I was like, okay, this is a good story. Now, my number 1. And it's interesting because I had to go with a story arc for number 1. And it was the Teen Titans Death of the Family tie-in. Now, it's interesting because my favorite character is Tim, but Tim wasn't in this. It was them going to try to find Tim. It was them looking for their teammate who's lost, who's been taken by the Joker, and then they're thrust completely in the middle of this Gotham chaos. And then you add to it, you get the Red Hood and the Outsiders joining in, where you got Roy and Starfire looking for Jason. And those 2 groups worked together and I just loved how that played out. It was, again, another 2 hero teams meeting up. They don't completely know we can trust each other, but they know, okay, I got to deal with this problem. Okay, let's see what happens. Then along the path, they learn, all right, these guys kind of know what they're doing. There's some growth here. And you got to see a great development, again, of the Teen Titan family, of them as a group, as a unit. And it was some really, again, solid writing, solid usage of really cool characters that I was like, this has been a really cool capstone of the growth of the Teen Titans for me. Right here, you're seeing Titans together.
Teen Titans was my number 1. And it's funny how, a lot of your theme with Young Justice has been Teen Titans related. So that wound up being my number 1 for a lot of the reasons you've already stated. For me, the book started off as kind of explaining to me how Tim Drake fits into the DC universe. And that was really a lot of my latching onto it because everybody else was it's seemingly so different. And as Cassie's been developed, I started to see more of what I've loved about Cassie as a character all the way through, all along. I like the whole armor bit. I like the story of the armor that's been developed. I like how Superboy and Red Robin were kind of helping her through that. And she had to learn how to open up with them. And how it sometimes would open doors and shut doors, then open doors again, because it's a rough situation and hard for her to talk about. And there was something about that whole arc that I really enjoyed. I loved the development of Bunker. He's a character who at first I looked as being very generic, and I've grown to really enjoy and find to be a fascinating character. I'm loving the introduction now of Raven, and I like how this is starting to put in things that make Teen Titans work. It's a good series. I'm really, really digging it, and it deserves to be in a number 1 spot because it's another one of those books that every month is giving me a fix now of what I like about the Teen Titans concept. I'm with you that I'm guessing you kind of were in a similar place that I was. It was initially so divorced from the Teen Titans concept that we both loved before that it was hard to get used to at first. But once I started to, wow, I've been really enjoying every single issue of it. And I like the family aspect of it, that there's that part of it is there. It's something that we as fans of Teen Titans have both always enjoyed. And that's a theme that has stayed through the book. It's a book that's really important to me. And the Teen Titans concept needs to be a part of the DC universe, so I hope that this one has some legs and keeps sticking around for a while because I'm really into it. Justice League?
Justice League. My number 5 spot.
Wait, actually, before you do that, why don't we tell people, Justice League, when we looked at this, didn't just involve the Justice League book. It involved a lot of the characters' books that are linked to Justice League. So, like Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, Green Arrow, stuff like that, Vibe, Katana, things like that are linked with the Justice League right now would be books that we would be looking at that are in that Justice League family. So I'm sorry. Please go ahead with your number 5.
Oh, okay. Well, my number 5 is Billy in Shazam. This is something that I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, oh, they missed the innocent boy who gets these powers. But I got to tell you, I really think this has been neat. I'm really digging who he is and where it's going, and I'm looking forward to seeing more stories of Billy and Shazam, especially when they started talking about how he and Cyborg are to kind of have a pretty good solid friendship. There's going to be those two running buddies because they're both pretty much younger kids in this really adult situation, and I see so much coolness and potential coming out of this that I'm like, this is something neat. I wasn't always a Captain Marvel, Billy Batson fan. This is something that is the growth in love of the character has grown over the years. And right now, this iteration of him, I'm like, dang, this is awesome.
My number 5 is The Flash. I love the style of this book. I love that The Flash feels fun and full of adventure. Barry was hard to get used to after his initial return, but the new 52 version has brought back like a youthful quality to him that has made him fun while still keeping the intelligent scientist. It's a great balance that feels modern with all of the great Flash elements that I love. Grodd, the Rogues, Iris, Patty, and more make this one of those go-to titles for me in the new 52. Every time an issue comes out, I just love that it's written and drawn with a style. And The Flash to me has always, in my favorite runs, felt like that. There's something adventure-filled and fun with it that is back in The Flash that harkens back to my favorite runs. And I just hope this creative team has a nice long run on this book because they really get how The Flash works as a concept.
My number 4, and there's probably going to be people who are going to beat me up over this, but I don't care. I like it. It's the romance of Superman and Wonder Woman. I gotta tell you, I even picked up the Valentine's Day special just because they had their story in it. I'm like, I gotta read more of this. This has been something that I love the usage of these two characters together. The fact that I was always a fan of the Lois and Clark relationship. Well, now we've got Clark and Diana, and it's, again, more exploration of them as people as well as them in character. You think about those moments in the Hell on Earth where she first swoops in, you have those inner dialogue. He wants to swoop her in his arms, tell her about his day. She wants to refer to him as her beloved. I love just those little moments there, and as it's going on, you want to see what happens, where it goes, the breakdown, why people don't want this to happen, which you can actually understand. It'll be a bad breakup, but there's still just something has me cheering and rooting for them to somehow work it out. And I'm the guy who really was upset about the Lois and Clark breakup. Well, I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with it now because this right here is a great story. This right here is something that has some legs for some future.
Number 4 for me is Justice League of America. And it would probably be up higher if there was more issues out. I'm just going off the first 2. This alone, Hawkman and Vibe at the Justice League of America table. Enough said. You could write a whole book like that, and I would love it. This is a great use of Hawkman, and being a Hawkman junkie, it really shows an understanding of that character and where he's come from. Besides Hawkman, I've loved the use of Green Arrow. I like this secret society being built. There's an intrigue being quickly developed here that 2 issues in has me talking about this book, thinking about this book. I love the team dynamic. Great to see Stargirl back. Great to see Martian Manhunter on this team. It's just a great fit. The reasoning for being there and the distinction between this and the Justice League is a great thing that I love about the title. I love that characters were picked because they are counterparts of the current Justice League team. And yet they also want them to be used for other purposes. Catwoman being on the team but not being able to be publicly on the team is something that I think was real interesting too, because it fits. You're saying government team, we got to clear her name first. I like that kind of bit. This whole thing really works for me. I really like it. 2 issues in, it's a great introduction, a great start to it, and it belongs at number 4. Like I said, I think if it had more issues, it would be higher up on my list, but I definitely want to note it because at starting out of the gate, they're taking characters who are important to me, using them in a correct fashion that has me really excited about them. Where'd you go next?
Well, I'd tell you, one of my surprises was Catwoman. And it's her title as well as her involvement in Justice League of America. Again, everything you said about how great it was, why she's part of the team, where she played off in it, the fact about the mystery and the classified nature, etc. But also just the great moments we have in her title. You know, you see the pain of her past and just that personal strength it takes from her to rise up against these moments. You have that balance with the fun, playful, cat-like, thievery that she's, has going on in her life, as well as just the tension between her and Batman. There's been some great stuff going on with the Catwoman title that I was like, man, this is a really cool title. I'm really happy this is around. And having her in Justice League of America was something like, that's neat. That's really cool. And let me just go right into my number 3 point, which, I fell in love with her during Blackest Night. I'm still in love with her. That's Mira. You think about just how wonderful moments she has with her interactions with humans. Every time she has some moments, I look forward to next week just because I'm like, oh, God, what's going to happen next with her? Because she is just that solid, wonderful character that we're getting some neat stuff, and it's going to keep growing, especially as, Arthur's story is going on. As his flows through, hers follows right along with it, where every time he's got some major stuff to deal with, I always look forward to seeing how is she going to deal with it? What is going to be her reaction? So you get this great dynamic in that title.
My number 3 is Wonder Woman. Diana's mythos of the gods and her relationship as a daughter of Zeus has really driven this series for me. I love the sense of varying relationship with members of her family. We see the strong warrior, the strategist, and yet also her compassion and the strong sense of honor, all the things that I love about her. And I jumped to this book. It's a beautiful read every month. Wonder Woman's one of those titles that has really enjoyed creatively wonderful creative teams throughout the years. This team is one of the shortlist great creative teams that have been on Wonder Woman. And I've been a great fan since the Perez run of Wonder Woman. I've consistently read the book through. If I stopped at some point because of budget, I ended up going back through and getting all of the issues because I really love the character and the concept. So it's a great title and a great read. This Wonder Woman for me is exactly what I love about Wonder Woman. It pulls the best of the past in while keeping it unique and different and new and fresh. And it works. I think it's just another one. I mentioned with The Flash, the stylized book. The artwork on this is another title that the artwork I just really appreciate. It's a beautiful title. It's something different. And if I really want more people to read this because I think they're missing out on a great book. It deserves a number 3 spot.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned Wonder Woman because with everything you said, I agree with you that it is a great title and it's well written and well crafted, very beautiful title, art wise as well as story wise. But the one thing for me that it's missing is the fact that we're not really seeing Diana have that Trinity status, the hero who's respected by the entire hero community. We get glimpses of it in the Justice League title, and we also saw part of it in glimpses of it in the Batwoman, her Batwoman appearance. But in her own individual title, I don't see that, and I kind of miss that. Now we are dealing with a little bit more earlier Diana, so we're going to see that grow, and eventually I'm sure that'll come through. But it's something that I really loved about all the past iterations of Wonder Woman that I wish we get that, and I think we're going to eventually get it, but Right now, when you talk Trinity, people are saying Batman, Superman, and Green Lantern. They're not saying Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And I think that's a shame because, with the team and the background and the history and the story that they're currently crafting in her title, that would be something kind of neat to see. And I think they could do it.
Where would you put that in the current storytelling, though? She's not dealing with the general public. She's been dealing with the gods. She's been dealing with her sister and the child. She hasn't been dealing with the public, so I don't really feel like the book has been flawed in the sense that it's skipping that. We haven't seen her interacting with the public where we could see that respect for her as a member of the Trinity. So in her dealings with the gods and the new gods and stuff like that have been appearing in her book, she hasn't been like doing a mission where, for example, she was working with the government or she was working with, a place where there would be lots of people who would kind of go, hey, that's Wonder Woman, that type of thing. So I guess I see your point in the sense that I'd like to see more of that for the character, too. I just don't know in her title right now. I wouldn't change the current storytelling. Like, she was in hell for how many issues?
Yeah.
You're not going to see that, like, where they're going to go, hey, it's a member of the Trinity. It just doesn't fit the storytelling that's there. So I don't think that's something that's inherently missing from her book because, like, if we'd seen a lot of public appearances from her and that was missing, I would agree with you. I'm not seeing that yet. Now, flipping back and seeing your point, I would certainly like to see more of that develop from the character. I think it's a character that's always needed a second title anyway. I'm baffled that Wonder Woman doesn't get the kind of respect as a character that she deserves. It almost feels like there needs to be another title that addresses some of those concerns that you're talking about, because I think what Azzarello and crew are doing with this title, I love that exploration of the gods, and because that's the stuff, like in the Perez run that I mentioned, what I love the most about that was that they brought that mythos of the gods back in, and, it's that kind of history is being brought into this title in a way that I really like it. I would like to see a lot of what you're talking about, so I agree with you, but I don't think it's something that's missing from the book because there's been nowhere to put it yet.
And I see your point, and I'm not, hopefully I'm not coming across as knocking the title because it's wonderfully written. It just is, it's always something that it's one of the things I loved about the Gail Simone run. And it's hard for me not to always go back to that when I think Wonder Woman stories, is that we had that, just wonderfully told mixed within the story. Now, granted, I agree with you. It'd be impossible. Well, it'd be difficult to actually put it in. And again, I lack the vision and/or intelligence to actually craft it. So the story, I'm happy with the story I'm getting. It's just one of those things that always just kind of, I don't know, it kind of rings in my head that, man, I wish we could see this. I wish we had this. I want more people to appreciate Wonder Woman because this is a great story. We are getting really cool, stories being told. We're getting this great exploration of the gods, and just, you talk about her interactions with the other gods. I'm a fan of the Greek gods. So this, variations and this modifications and, modernizations of these characters, of these, of this epic, story has been absolutely a joy for me. And I'm really digging it and loving it. But there's always just that little bit that nags in the back of my head.
I want to see those things. So it's not that I understand your point and what you'd like to see from the character. I just, in this title with where it's going right now, which I'm loving this title. I guess that's why I'm defending it, because I like the current direction of the title. I like everything that it's doing. To put that in anywhere right now, it would be derailing where the story's currently going. Now, is that something I'd like to see more of in the DC universe? So I guess I'm not invalidating your point. I'm invalidating it with regards to this title, because I'm talking about the title, not the character. Right. I think the title has been brilliant. I love it. In the DC universe in general with the character, I agree that I'd like to see more of that with the character to make her feel more like she is a major player. I think that's something that in fandom I'd like to see people acknowledging her with that as well. So I'm not like completely in disagreement with you. I just, when it comes to her own title, I don't think there's anywhere for them to have put it in right now. That's the only point that I'm making. I'm not disputing your idea that she should feel more like she's the Trinity, because you're right about that. I agree with you. So it's more of a partial disagreement in the sense that when it comes to her title.
Yeah, well, we're in a pretty solid agreement on each other. My number 2 spot is Justice League. And it's funny because this went back and forth between number 2 spot and number 1 spot for me. This truly feels like a flagship title for me. This is such solid in my top 10, possibly even top 5, that I'm really enjoying it. Every week I'm digging the growth of the team. Every week I want to see where it's going to happen. What's down the line.
You get your Justice League weekly?
Yes. Every week I get Justice League. I get the stories in my head, along with the voices and the ringing in my ear.
I want to get on your plan. Jim's like 100 issues in already. What happens next, Jim?
Well, I'm not going to tell you.
I'm just teasing you. Please go ahead.
But this has been, it's been a great, just usage of the powerhouses in the DC universe. And as I said, I see that Wonder Woman that I want to see in this title. I see their interaction. I loved how this unit has grown and developed, and as new characters are getting introduced to the team, as new creative forces are getting introduced to the team, things are going to shift, things are going to change, but there's always going to be that solid Justice League. It's got a name that rings and it means something. And I'm very solid and very happy with it. And I digged what we were getting before the New 52. I'm not knocking any of that. I thought we had some great Justice League stories, but there is something about seeing Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman on that team together. It is having the Flash in there. I love Cyborgs on the team now. We got Billy going to be joining the mix, shortly. This has been what I want out of a Justice League. This has been some great stuff, and I'm very excited for the future.
Amen. And it's funny how, like, you and I kind of saw how we were doing this differently. I was more title by title focused in most of the lines, with the exception of, like, Batman. But for this one, it's funny. My number 2 is Justice League. So we kind of saw a lot of this the same. It's funny how we, from time to time, not knowing how we were each going to approach this, other than that we were breaking it up by line, that we do intersect from time to time. This was a hard one also for me to put at number 2. Justice League has been a must-read title. Wonder Woman and Superman's relationship, I know you mentioned it before, the development here and spilling out into the DC Universe versus the DC Universe forcing this book into a corner has been a good thing. This reminds me of Morrison's JLA run, where this book acknowledges and embraces the characters' solo titles, but the events here also have just as much of an impact. I think that's incredibly important. You mentioned flagship. It's not going to feel like a flagship title if it's constantly being derailed and beholden to everything else in the universe. It's got to also drive the universe. I love how the responsibilities of the characters drive expansion of the team, that's where it's acknowledging their books. I love how the Prestige leaves characters in awe, like the Pledge Driver. People are like looking at them going, oh my gosh, we're here at the Justice League. Whether they're seriously ready to join or not, I loved those moments during the Pledge Drive. I also appreciate that some characters say no because of the sheer responsibility. They're like, we got our own thing going on here. Like the Black Lightning stuff with Blue Devil, I thought was really great. I thought that was really cool. And the constant development, the crossover with Aquaman was great, but single issues of this series work real well. You mentioned Shazam before, and I'm going to go to that co-feature. That's something that I've been really digging as well. The development of Billy. We know Multiversity's coming, and I'm guessing that the traditional Shazam universe is probably out there still somewhere. I know Morrison's a fan of that, and that kind of seems to me to be a place for that. That Fawcett City kind of belongs on its own planet. And I mean that in a totally respectful way, because I love that stuff. I grew up being a fan of Shazam. I watched the show as a kid. I had the Viewmasters. I remember the character from animation, and then comic book appearances of the character. I loved Power of Shazam. I think now at this stage, though, you can still tell, and I'd love to see when Multiversity kicks off after it's all done, them start telling stories of worlds like that. I'd love a regular classic Captain Marvel miniseries or Shazam miniseries, however they would do it. This character I've really grown to love. I love that it brings in things like Mary and Freddie, and I like he's an adopted character, and that I'm a kid who was adopted. I was adopted at birth, so I didn't have the experiences that Billy had or Freddie or anything like that. It was basically I forget half the time I was adopted because I was adopted as an infant. But when I see stories like this, I do attach to characters that are adopted and things, just because of that, and I like seeing Billy. And I like his story. I liked his relationship with Freddy, where you kind of see Billy as being that brash kid that you mentioned earlier. But then at its core, you see that, wait a minute, you cut through all the nonsense, he really is a nice kid. And that was something the Wizard noticed. You know, like the Wizard at first said, like, you can't be the one. But then he saw redeeming quality in him. And he's like, you know, maybe in this era, this is what I need to be looking for. This is what I need to see. I like that the fight with Black Adam, you're dealing with a monster in Black Adam. And I like that it's not clean for Billy. It's terrifying for Billy. This is Billy who thought he had all this superpower and that he was invincible. He's being torn apart by this guy who wants to kill him and take his power. He won't become Shazam because of that. He has to deal with reasons to become Shazam, to deal with this. How do you become a hero out of all that? You've got a scared kid that's in there as well. That was something that I really dug and enjoyed. This is going to lead to an evolution to the character. This is going to lead why this character is going to be on that team. I love that. It's something I always really found interesting with the character when he interacts with the major superhero teams. Johns did this very well in JSA when he brought Billy on board there. And the team wasn't really aware that that was a kid in there. So it was something that I really loved and enjoyed about the series. Actually, in that series, only Stargirl knew that he was a kid. And the team was really upset with him when they thought he had a relationship going with Stargirl and he was an adult. And I like that concept. So is the Justice League going to know he's a kid? Is he just going to relate to Cyborg because of the age difference? I don't know what's going to happen there. I really like that part of the series as well. So I love that it's not just the main Justice League title. I'm with you that this is a top 5 book, easily. And it's surprising that it's not my number one, but when we talk about number one, there's obvious reasons why number one is what it is. So what did you have for number one?
Well, I had for number one, it's my favorite scene, and it's probably still my favorite scene, but it's also probably one of my top titles. And it is Aquaman. And it's specifically that scene in the fish restaurant. I still talk about that. I still will tell people about it. And I still sing the praises of Aquaman. I tell you, I'm loving this character. I mentioned Mira before, and I'm going to throw Arthur into the ring as well. This has been a great hero. This has been right here. This is Aquaman. This is the King of the Sea. This is Arthur. And I'm loving this so much that I was like, you know what? This gets the number one spot. And I did jump back and forth between this one and Justice League having my top spot.
Me too.
Just because of everything. But you know what? In the end, I looked, and when people would ask me about comics and they'd ask me, I'd be like, oh yeah, Justice League's doing really good. Like, oh God, you got to hear about Aquaman. The guy who talks to fish. I'm like, oh my God, they've done so much more with him. And they even made jokes about the fact that everyone thinks he just talks to fish. I've told that story multiple times to different people, and sometimes they've actually appreciated me telling them the story. But it's still, there's a fire and a passion towards his title. So, boom, Aquaman's my top.
Same with me. It's funny, when you said Justice League number 2, I'm like, he's got to have something Aquaman related for number 1 then. I did the same thing you did. I kind of tossed it around back and forth between the two of them, and I had to really think about both titles. And both are top 5 titles. I 100% agree with you. Mira, Atlantis, his secret team from the past, his rich history with his dad and the scientist, the sense of responsibility and a love that seems to be able to survive all that just really stands out for me. This is a must-read title, and stands tall as being one of the best of the New 52. If you're not reading this, use this to fill a spot of a title that makes you crabby. This brings a smile to my face each month. It's high action. I wish I could read it weekly like Jim does Justice League. It's high action, strong character drama. The recent JLA crossover hopefully brought this to new readers. I want this to be around for a long time, and I'm sorry for I just thought that was really funny, because I do that all the time. And honestly, Aquaman is just an amazing, amazing, cool read. And I know we connect over that one because I agree with you about Mira, the love for Mira. And it's their relationship and the fact that we've still got that same Mira from Blackest Night interacting with Arthur. And this is the Aquaman. You know, I talk about Peter David's run all the time. This is just as relevant as that run. And that's not taking away from this run. It's complementing both runs on what they do. This is today's version of that. It's high quality, high end storytelling. This is taking a character and a placement in Atlantis, bringing in these crazy creatures from the Atlantis' past and having them be a part of the storyline. And that Aquaman is forced to face the difference between being a human and being a ruler of a nation. A whole, I don't know how you even label them. What is Atlantis? It's a whole new world down there because it's not really tied to our world in the same way that you would normally think. And in many ways, it's arguable that underwater world is bigger than our whole world outside of it. I think that's great. I think it's just an amazingly cool concept. I can't wait to see where it's going to go from here. I'm glad to see that Jeff Johns has no intention to leave it anytime soon. I hope that continues. I hope the book does well enough that warrants him staying on because he really has a grasp for this character. If they ever have to replace him on that book down the road, they've got to put somebody special that really understands this character the way that Johns does, because this is a must-read title. And I agree with you; it's the #1 Justice League book. I'm going to do my biggest surprises.
Okay.
The interesting one for me is Green Arrow. I feel it's a book that should be making my top 5, and it's not. And the reason why is it needs a lengthy run from a solid creative team. The teams that have been on it have been good. The first team that kicked off was good. I think it picked up with Ann Nocenti and Freddie Williams, who I love his art. I think they were heading in a direction, I was really getting attached to the title. So I want to compliment their run because I really digged it. And I was ready to see more from it. I'm glad they got a chance to kind of bookend it at the end. I thought the creative shift, I'm like, whoa, they're doing a creative shift again on this title? I'm just getting into it. They're just developing this. They're taking it from being a title for me that was a good title that was kind of hanging in the middle, and they're bumping it back up my stack again. It was heading to that top 5 status. They were, doing what they were supposed to. Now they switch to Jeff Lemire, who I think is doing a great job. They need to let this book have a sustained direction. I'm enjoying the last run I enjoyed. Now I'm digging this run. Give this a chance. Let's get this run into its place because Green Arrow's a character that's very important to me. I feel he should be in the top 5 for me for how much I love him. So this isn't a negative. It's more of this is a book that has been making a climb. I think making a creative shift right now, I'm okay, you're going to do this again. In order to keep confidence going in this title, you have to give this creative a chance because it has to keep going in a direction where this title's important, especially with the TV series out there. It needs to be in there. So it's been a title that it's important to me, and I want to see it get there because they've been building me back into the book. Let's keep it going. My second one, Vibe. 2 issues in. I love this book. I could be Vibe. I love how he questions himself and why he is chosen. I also love that he thinks he actually has the option to walk away from all this. That he has that choice until we see Gypsy in a bottle. I mean, it's it's really clear, and seeing that there is a spot there for Vibe if necessary. That is something that, to me, the telling his brother and that there's a potential worry of him knowing too much is a good twist. It's an amazing read on its own, but a must-read if you're reading Justice League of America. Those are 2 titles, Green Arrow and that. And let me clarify again with Green Arrow. I'm liking Green Arrow a lot. I liked a lot. I was, Green Arrow with Ann Nocenti and Freddie Williams, they were on the right track. There was storytelling going there where I'm like, wow, this is a book I'm getting into again. And when they did the creative shift, I'm like, well, I was liking what they were doing. We're going in the right direction here. So they did the creative shift, and they put on Jeff Lemire, who's somebody I love. Great choice. They're heading in a direction again that I'm liking. So they're continuing the momentum. It needs to continue. I want Green Arrow to be back in that spot. So that's one that I want to talk about. I'll throw in my disappointment. Savage Hawkman. I was lukewarm to this title at the beginning. As a Hawkman fan, I thought it was a good book, but this is another one that I wanted to see step up a little. Mark Poulton and Rob Liefeld did that. They took over, brought back Shira with Joe Bennett, took this book in the direction it needed. I really enjoyed the Hawkman Wanted crossover. I felt like this is a book that has been building and finally is now where it needs to be. The whole conclusion with that with Shira and where things went. I'm sad to see it canceled because it's gotten back for me as a Hawkman fan who, I'm kind of your target audience for this. It got back to being must-read for me. And I like the Thanagarian Kadar Hall version. I think he's in the place where he's at in the Justice League of America because Jeff Johns really, slamming that thing on the table with Vibe in that whole moment. I really dug that. So I'm disappointed that this book kind of took so long to get where it's at, but I'm really glad that it's gotten there. I'm sad that it's going, but I'm glad Hawkman's in a place where he's at with Justice League. So those are some things I just kind of want to see in the future. These are characters that are important to me. And I think there's been creative who have done some really cool things with these characters that haven't been acknowledged. And that's why I shouted out Ann Nocenti and Freddie E. Williams, Jeff Lemire. These are people that are doing great things with Green Arrow. Mark Poulton, I thought, did a great job with Rob Liefeld on what they were doing with Savage Hawkman. I thought they, and Joe Bennett, I love Joe Bennett's artwork on Hawkman. There's just something about this guy that I really get. And so I'm just liking seeing where this is going from here. Limited series?
With me, I started off, and I don't know if it actually could fall into, the Raging Oscars as being qualified, but I really wanted to throw it out there. It's the Huntress Limited Series, and mostly because it really did a great job of setting up who the Huntress is and what's going on with the New 52. It didn't give us any details as to her and Power Girls Association. We get that through their titles, but I thought this was a great title. It was a fun story, and it was a really neat Huntress story that I was like, man, this is cool. This is great. And then we get the connection. We see, yes, this is that New 52 Huntress. It came out before the New 52, but they wanted to make sure it was part of the universe, and they pulled it in nicely. It was something, as I was reading it every single time, I was thinking, yeah, this is cool. And I still, to the present day Huntress, go back to that, think back to that yes, this was part of, this story is part of this universe. And I was really glad to see that they did that and they tied it in nicely.
That came out during the New 52.
It did?
Yeah, it came out before World's Finest.
Okay.
But it was one of the early miniseries that came out during the New 52. And the reason I mentioned that when you were saying you didn't know if it belonged or not, it certainly does, because it came out, I have it in there as number 3. For the exact same reasons you're mentioning. I thought it was, because at the end is where we get that reveal in the last issue. And Paul Levitz returns to his creation, delivers a Helena bent on revenge. And I was with you that I thought this was, I'm like, are they bringing in the Huntress that we knew before the New 52 and bringing her into the universe? And at the end, we got the reveal that, wait a minute, she was posing as this girl. The art by Marcus, too, was rich, and it's a recommended read because this is a direct prequel to the World's Finest series. It actually ends off leading right into the World's Finest series. So it's a great read, and I actually wound up being my number 3 of the New 52 limited series so far because I loved it the same way you do. I know when you and I have had talks about this one, both on and off the air, this was a miniseries that we both really dug because we liked the Huntress concept, and absolutely, you're right, it's 100% relevant to be on this one because of that. So good choice. Where'd you go for your next one, seeing as I kind of jumped ahead of that?
Well, Legion Secret Origins. Again, I'm not a huge, I wasn't always a huge Legion of Superheroes fan, and I didn't know the characters, didn't understand them. So when this Secret Origins came out, I did pick it up, I read it, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is some neat stuff. Again, I'm pretty sure this will fit into the New 52 categories. Oh, yeah. So again, and actually, to be honest with you, the reason Huntress and that one were so far down on my list was because I did have some questions whether can I really tie this into the New 52? Is this, or but it was a great story. I loved seeing just, again, the backdrop gave me some better understanding of who these characters are. Because as my growth and understanding of Legion of Superheroes develops, I want more information. And this came out right at the right time. I was getting all 3 of the Legion titles as I was looking at it. And I would have really loved to see this continue on to early Legion stories. You got Legion of Superheroes, you had Legion Lost, and then they could have gone with the early Legion and actually continued on that vibe and just continue that growth that way.
Yeah, Secret Origin definitely came out. It was for the purpose of giving kind of a background. I'm assuming because so much of Legion continuity stayed in place, kind of a way to let people know maybe who were just jumping on the Legion with the New 52 what their background was, and I thought it did a great job of that. I really enjoyed that miniseries as well for the exact same reasons you mentioned. It didn't actually make my top 5 list because there's so many great miniseries. My number 5 was Phantom Lady and Dollman. I love these two. Dollman being the genius who experiments and how his love for Phantom Lady, which she often is taken advantage of, leads him to go against his better judgment and help her with her vendettas. He isn't just a drone, though. He speaks up as the voice of reason. I love the humanity that I can agree with him, but also see why she's so driven. I also like that their relationship evolves to the point where she realizes just how important he is to her. I hope this has a chance of developing into a Freedom Fighters book because I'm loving these mini-series that are leading to that. But this was one that was really important to me. I love how Dollman became Dollman. You know, it was something where they were trying to kill him. and it was the first time his experiment was used on a human, but he doesn't know how to get back to full size again, but that leads him to, getting tied in with Uncle Sam and all that. I really liked that whole link, and these miniseries are really working for me. What's your next one?
Actually, ditto what you just said. My number 3 is, I kind of lumped it as all the Freedom Fighter titles together, but it definitely is Doll Man and Phantom Lady, as well as Human Bomb. I think these were just some great stuff that's coming out, and I'm echoing, as you were talking, I'm just nodding my head saying, yes, I want a Freedom Fighters title. I like the new Uncle Sam. I want how this is going. I want to see where this goes through. You got the right creative teams on this. Just continue on the story going. Give them the monthly. Let's run with it, and let's have some fun with this. This has been, again, really wonderful mini-series, limited series. This has been something I'm hoping these are doing well enough that it's getting the attention it deserves, and they can take this right into a monthly title.
My number 4 was Joe Kubert Presents. We did the first issue of this on the show, and I am still really digging this. I love the presentation feels special and reminds me so much of what I love about classic comics. I feel like the creator is speaking to me when I read this, and I like that presentation. It kind of reminds me of what I enjoyed so much about Stan Lee narration at the start of classic cartoons. There is a depth and quality to each of the stories presented in these issues, and that really needs to be experienced. I'm a fan of great anthology titles, and this book has that. If you're a fan of amazing art, interesting and diverse stories, pick this one up. It's a cutting-edge set of material that should have any fan respect the importance of great experimental miniseries. And that it feels very experimental. There's a connectivity to it, but yet each one of the stories has a unique feel. It's a miniseries that really is important to me, and it deserves my top 5 because I've really just, love the unique nature of it. And that's what miniseries should be all about.
My number 2, actually what I did was I combined the Before Watchmen series. I didn't want to say this Before Watchmen or this one. It's the overall concept of what they're doing with the Before Watchmen. I'm really digging these. I'm falling behind a little bit on the reading, but I've enjoyed them so much that when I saw they were doing the hardcover editions, when DCBS announced it, I jumped on it. I ordered all of them immediately, and because I know it's going to be better for, it's easier for me on the rereading when I have everything collected together, and it's a great thing that going in the future I can let me reread this again, let me pull this one out because this was absolutely wonderful stories being told, and I'm like this is good. And when the absolutes, if they come out, I'll probably pick those up as well, and it'll go right next to my Watchmen stuff. This has been I wanted this type of moments. I wanted this type of development. I wanted this, growth of these characters, and I'm getting exactly what I wanted.
I'm going to go to my disappointment first and then jump back, if I could. My disappointment was, did you pick up Insurgent?
Yes.
Okay, do you know it's being canceled after 3 issues?
Yes, I know.
And that's an irritation of mine. I don't complain about much on this show, but in my opinion, a limited series, especially when it's a 6-issue limited series, should be finished. I know the sales, and I mean the sales numbers are dropping considerably on this, so I'm going to say that I completely understand that. Even if you don't release it in paper, release it digitally, do something for the fans that picked it up. I think a mini-series, there's a contract with a mini-series that you're selling them that's going to be finite. It's going to be a certain number of issues. I expect that to finish. Even if they went to 5 issues on it and just said, we're going to kind of combine some of the elements just so you've got 4 and 5 to wrap it up. Do something to wrap it up. Maybe they'll do that with issue 3. I don't know. I'm like, whoa. I know that, the sales numbers are driving this. And the sales numbers, in fairness, the sales numbers really dropped on this one. So I get it. On that end. But I like the miniseries so far. It's not one that made my top 5. I'm going to admit that totally. But I'm liking it. It's a good book. I want the end of it. I started reading that, and I feel there's a contract with a miniseries that, you start off reading that. That, to me, there should be a certain confidence that when you pick up a miniseries, it's going to be done. It's going to be finished on some level. Even if they have to shrink it down, there's going to be, if they do kind of wrap it up in some way at the end, cool. Great that they acknowledge that, but I don't know how you can press 6 issues into 3 and do that the justice that it deserves for us as fans who tried it out. And I think there's a certain point to saying, we told you it was going to be a 6-issue series. We're going to deliver that to you. So that's a pet peeve of mine. And I hate to, be a downer and bring that down there, but that is something with me There's very few things I complain about. That's one I will.
Yeah.
I don't like that because I want to read. I understand that, it's got to be, we're not going to do like Insurgent 2 or anything like that. I don't have any illusions of all that, but I don't know how you fall on that, but I want a miniseries finished. I'll wait. I don't have any problems with miniseries, being, the creators can't get back to it or something like that, and the issue comes out 2 years later or something like that, which I had a Kevin Smith miniseries that I read where they eventually finished it, and I'm like, okay, it was a Black Cat one, and, at least they finished it. This needs to be finished. That's something that bugs me to no end. But jumping back to the positives on that, my number 2, The Shade. James Robinson returns to one of the most amazing elements from his Starman run and reminds me why I love his work so much. The Shade is a journey of a man whose rich history of being a villain and a sort of hero, I gotta put quotes around that, trying to deal with love and living for as long as he has. I love the sense in this title of his own long life weighing on him. He feels human. There's a family history that's a part of this. There's also a history with the villains and their family history through generations that have been coming after him. Some of them good people, some of them bad people, some of them trapped in this endless cycle of dealing with the Shade. Yet there's always a sense of something that makes him feel different. It's truly an important title. I loved this run. This was a great 12-issue miniseries, and this was just... really had a hard time not making this my number 1 miniseries because of how much I loved it.
And actually, Shade was my surprise for me, and it's not even just surprise that because I know of the character, but I never was a solid, I wasn't as solid with the character as you have been because my exposure to Starman is still growing. I haven't read everything on Starman. I haven't read everything on Shade. And so when it first came out, I picked it up because I enjoyed Starman so much, because I enjoyed his writing. I'm like, let's pick this up and see what happens. But I was really surprised at how much I got connected to the character with such little exposure that I had leading into it.
My number 1 miniseries was The Ray. Why is this not a series? When this mini kick hit, I kicked off like a New 52 reimagining of the Freedom Fighters, and I adored his appearance in Phantom Lady and Dollman. I know the sales numbers aren't great on these minis, but I gotta be honest with you, this one I felt like this character could have been launched into his own title right away. I hope this leads to a Freedom Fighters book. But this guy, he was fun. Right out of the starting gate, I wanted to hang with him. So... when this miniseries ended, I was like, ooh, I want more right away. So I think that's a great sign from a miniseries. We've had that happen before with miniseries where maybe the sales numbers didn't generate, and I get why it's not a monthly title. I get that. So I'm not unreasonable there. But it felt like one to me that I'm like, I wanted more. I wanted this monthly or weekly. It's a title that I really, really enjoyed the whole experience. My biggest surprise kind of harkens back to what you just talked about a little earlier before Watchmen. I was trying to figure out how am I going to put this in there because it's an event, it's this huge thing. It's a bold and scary move. Watchmen's such a huge name, and to add to that, background could be a disaster in the making. I love the approach of attaching the right creators to stories that expand the backstory and build to the Watchmen miniseries. I felt this was a better approach than trying to start with a sequel because this adds to the Watchmen experience versus taking away from where, we might have imagined the characters going afterwards. I walked in with excitement, but have genuinely enjoyed the whole line. If I had to pick one that stands out for me in general, and this is really hard for me to do, the Minutemen mini in particular was a large part of the excitement for me. I love the sense of the need to create a symbol from a lie and how that would weigh differently on the characters as their life progressed. And it led to the reason of understanding why Night Owl created the biography that he did, talking about their history. And I think that added, and it didn't contradict anything that I saw from Moore, at least for me, none of these have. They've only added to that experience and fleshed it out more and made that series more relevant to me. And I think it's a bold move to do that because you risk ticking off a whole bunch of people. And I thought it's been highly successful in its enjoyability. And it's why I feel like it deserves a place in my top 5. Like you, how do you bundle that? Because to me, it's an experience of the whole thing. I've been reading all of them, and I've been really enjoying just kind of gradually immersing myself in the event. And I think it was a really special, good move that they did. And I think when you put top quality creative on something like this, this is what you get delivered. And I'm just glad that it turned out the way that it did. I hope other people are enjoying it the way you and I clearly are, because it's been a very special. Now, go ahead.
Well, I didn't do my number one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, Shade was my surprise.
Okay.
My number one, and it's actually a scene from the Silk Spectre before Watchmen. And it's the fact that the famous comedian Smiley Face Button actually came from Laurie. He actually took it from her bedside when she was asleep, when he dealt with the one boyfriend that he got rid of for the mom. I think for me, that actually, one, it was kind of cool, added strength to why he always wore it. And also it was a nice little justification on something the sensei said that when we were talking about the comedian, saying, hey, wouldn't it be neat if he got that from Laurie? So I was glad when I actually saw it, like, hey, cool, woohoo!
With that note, let's go on to the Otherworld Space Odyssey. You did them as two separate categories. And when I was doing them, just for some reason for me, I needed to do them as one category. I did a top 5 with them. And so when we go through, you'll have an opportunity to talk longer about this because yours will go longer. So why don't we go ahead and have you start with Other Worlds, I guess?
Well, actually, I can combine the two.
Okay.
I think I can combine the two.
So go ahead and why don't you go ahead and start off?
Okay, well, I'm going to start off with the Stormwatch. When you look at the betrayal, especially the betrayal of Harry Tanner, and just his eventual lobotomizing by the engineer was just some great stuff. And some great story swerves that really it's one of those things with Stormwatch. They've been building up stuff throughout the beginning, throughout the story arc, all the way through the ending. And I loved seeing that growth. I love seeing that. It was a slow build. It wasn't, jumping out of the gate, bam, explosions, big thing. No, it was a nice, subtle thing. And it was that growth and the development of characters that were relatively new and to unknown, and it's shown, okay, this is who they are, this is where it's coming from. And I have to say that I got a great enjoyment out of this, and I'm pretty sure Stormwatch is still going through. It didn't get cut, correct?
I haven't heard anything about it getting cut.
Okay, yeah,
I hope not.
Stormwatch is one of those titles I've always been worried about because I don't know how well it's doing. And I know if it's not with the big guns, if it doesn't have the big names to it, is it going to keep going through? But it's something that I'm deeply enjoying, and this is a great title.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of those Wildstorm titles, the ones that have had Wildstorm background, have been. So I'm with you. I worry about that book because I'm enjoying it too. My number 5 was Dial H. And it was a real interesting book for me because I had read the Dial H that had been done years ago by Will Pfeiffer. That was my first kind of exposure to that kind of concept. Then I ended up picking up the showcase volume with it. But I really didn't have a long history with understanding the whole concept of the dial, how the whole thing worked and things like that. I have loved this title. It's freaky, a little weird. Especially the concept that these are characters that are pulled, and I don't know how true this is to the original story, these are characters pulled from another universe, brought into our world, and it often causes great turmoil on their planet where people can die, people are hurt, what they were in the middle of never gets completed, because they're being yanked out of their world to ours to help out in these situations, and you can see them being bitter about all that. And I love that whole concept. I think it's just freaky, it's weird. You would be sitting there saying, like, I'm being hunted for this dial. How can I not use it, right? You have to, because it's your only power source to defend yourself. But knowing what you're doing every time you're using it, it just adds a whole freak factor to this book that is so hard to explain. And yet, I really love it. It's a great title. I like the main character because he feels so human. And I can see why he does everything that he does. I love that he's learning along the way how to use the dial. I love that he has to make the decision along the way to say, am I going to let somebody else use the dial or am I going to use the dial? I like that the dial breaks and they have to find a way to find parts to repair it. It's just, there's so many cool things about the title that I've just really enjoyed all along that it hit my number 5 spot because I've been digging it so much.
With me going on, my next spot is weird because it could have very easily been tied in with my number 5, but I wanted to put it separate just because it was it's a cool moment, and it's, it's laying some groundwork for some great stuff coming down the Stormwatch pipeline. And it's Midnighter and Apollo, their romance, and just how it's built, how it's begun, and everything it's gone through. There are characters that when I first started reading them, years ago, I didn't realize they were gay. I didn't realize it when they were first introduced that, okay, this is a couple. They're together. And as soon as it was that moment, as soon as I realized, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, wow. And it was kind of like, it kind of threw me for, it threw me for a shock, because I was like, I didn't think a comic book company would do this. I didn't think they would, figure they'd be worried about backlash or just everything that came, could possibly come out of it. And I was so glad that to see them say, you know what, this is who they are. These are the characters. This is what they're about. And when they started teasing everything going through in Stormwatch between these two, they weren't together. This is their first meeting, and just the relationship and the dating process up until the most recent issue, present issue 18, where he actually flat out questioned, hey, are you even gay? What's going on here? And then, the big kiss, he goes, well, I guess that answers my question. And it was just, I laughed, I cheered. I was like, yes, this is cool. I'm glad to see they're completely going to be going through this, and this is something that's not going to go away, and this is a part of the character. They're not the gay superheroes. This is who they are. They're not gay, man, but they are superheroes. They are fighters. They're warriors who happen to be gay. This is who they are. And I like seeing that when you get characters, when they actually let them have their individual personalities and their own growth and their own development and their own process that they're going to go through. I'm glad to see we're not losing that in the New 52.
My number 4 is a combination of 3 titles, and this is the only time that I really did this. It was Grifter, Voodoo, and Stormwatch. Mainly because of that whole Wildstorm experience. I liked being on the ground floor of these characters being introduced to the DC Universe. I was a big fan of when they did this with, the Archie comic superheroes. In particular, that book, The Shield, that we love so much. I liked them taking that experiment of trying to bring that character into the DC Universe, that whole concept into the DC Universe. When they did this with Grifter, Voodoo, and Stormwatch, and they were done in different ways, but I like the introduction of things like the Daemonites, and I like how Stormwatch has a rich history with Demon Knights, and how that plays into who they become in the future. There's something about that, adding a longevity there. Voodoo, I liked her being this alien who had clones out there, and her having to deal with, who she is in this world. I wanted to see more from that book. I really liked that aspect on it. Sometimes you're trying to figure out which one of them am I reading right now, which I thought was kind of cool about the whole thing. Grifter, the relationship with his brother, and just how that whole book kicked off. And I was really enjoying, his kind of, tie-in with the Daemonites and Hellspawn and stuff like that. These were characters that I really have been enjoying. Stormwatch, I'm really glad, seems to be sticking around, because I'm with you on everything you've said about Stormwatch. I think it's great. But Grifter and Voodoo not being around is something that I'm missing, because I really was enjoying both of those titles. And I'm glad they gave Grifter a little bit of a longer run that Voodoo got, because I was digging him. These were characters that I've always liked out of Wildstorm, and I liked them giving it a chance to try and fit them into the DC Universe. And I hope that we will see them again at some point somewhere as a part of something, because I think that they're just really cool characters. So, where'd you go from here?
My number 3 is Legion. Legion of Superheroes. I talked a little bit earlier, and I'm going to keep saying that now I get it. We are Legion. I get it, and I love it. Now, it's funny. I still, every so often, have to, go through and read the editor's notes saying, okay, who is this again? Oh, okay, yeah. Because there is such a huge Legion of Superheroes universe, and I don't always remember what their real names are. I know their code names, and their code names, their powers, which is kind of nice for Legion of Superheroes. But I still every so often have to go back through and just figure out, okay, who is this? But even as I'm doing it, it's not taking away from my enjoyment. It's not taking away from what it is, who it is, and what's going on in the stories. And I think that is a sign of some really good writing, that I don't have that same kind of connection that I have with Batman and Superman, where I know them like the back of my hand. But as I'm reading this story, I'm like, you know what? This is cool. Oh, that's a classic. And I catch myself saying that a lot of times. Oh, that's classic Lightning Lass. That's classic. Even though I don't really know these characters that well, that I could say that's classic characterization for them, but I'm so comfortable with who they are, what I'm getting, that I feel like I know that and I understand who they were, where they come from. And I think that's just, really high praise for the creative teams.
3, 2, and 1 in this category are 3 of my favorite titles being published right now. Number 3 for me is ditto to what you just said, Legion of Superheroes. I love that this story has survived with its rich history mainly intact. There is something important about the sense of loss, survival, victory, and defeat. If you're a fan of longevity and history in DC Comics, Legion is the book for you. Time and universe shifts may occur, but the Legion folds into them, and that happened all the way back to Crisis on Infinite Earth, 0 Hour, stuff like that. We need to talk more about this title on the show, actually. Yeah. Paul Levitz and Keith Giffen are doing this huge epic with the return of Fatal 5 that is literally universe-shattering in a way that will have long-lasting impact on the Legion. I genuinely fear for their lives every issue right now. I love Phantom Girl as the current leader, and having her deal with tragedy right at the start, with the support of her fellow Legionnaire members, is just a home run for me. This is a story that's going to have drastically huge impact, and I love that it's universe spanning. I love that it feels big, it feels epic. It's like the Great Darkness saga that we read in the past. Such a great book. And I just feel like something that epic building right now. This is a great team. And it's on my short list of titles that I'm just really, really loving. Legion is a book that I will admit I let stockpile from time to time. Not because I don't love the title. It's because it doesn't tie into the present day continuity as much. So sometimes I just let it stockpile, and I like to read 3 issues, 4 issues sometimes at a time. But then once I read that, I'll stay for a few months right on target with, like right now with this big storyline going on, there's no way I'm stockpiling this because the impact's too huge of what's going on right now. But sometimes stockpiling a title isn't a negative for me. Sometimes I stockpile it just because I enjoy reading a bunch of issues together. Legion's been one of those books that I've just kind of enjoyed doing that and just been kind of like, okay, it's time to read the Legion, and I'll read like 4 issues in a row. And I just kind of like doing that because I don't have to wait, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a program that I DVR and let DVR just because I like to watch it in blocks. This fits that way. The Following is actually how I got in that television show, The Following. I know I mentioned it earlier. I think it was the last episode now, depending on how our discussion played out. But that TV show I jumped on late. It was one that I always wanted to watch. I DVR'd it, and I just never had a chance to start watching it. I watched like 8 episodes of that in a row, over like a 2-day stretch. And that was just a great way to watch that program. And Legion, I kind of do that way on purpose, kind of like what I do with American Vampire, just because it doesn't tie into like any kind of current continuity. I like reading it that way. Creatively, though, there is no way I would drop this title. It's just so good. And I really think we need to soon do a segment on the show focusing on this Fatal 5 storyline that's going on in Legion because it's such a great book, and I don't think we've done this title enough justice on our program because it's just really, this is great comics. Paul Levitz knows what he's doing.
Oh, amen.
Your number 2?
Well, it's funny because I'm willing to bet our 1, 2, and 3 are the same 3 titles. But the question is, what's the order?
Okay.
Now, for me, when I was toying, going back and forth between Earth 2 and also World's Finest, I couldn't figure out what the final order was. For me, I finally have a solid thing, and my number 2 spot goes to Earth 2. Now, I think they've done a wonderful job creating this universe.
Wait, before you go any further, you have to know what my order is on that, right? Like, you have to guess we have a different order on that.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought that.
But no, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I love that like our top 3 wound up to be kind of the same, which says a lot about the quality of these titles. And I didn't want to cut you off midway through where you're going to go with this, because I'm anxious to hear what you're going to say about Earth 2. So, but that's my number one, and my number two is World's Finest. So why don't we do it this way? Why don't you go ahead and start talking about Earth 2? I'll jump in with my views on Earth 2, and then we'll go to World's Finest in the order that you did it. But know that our order, everybody listening, our orders are reversed on this. But
right.
I think that'll be a logical way to have this discussion, because Earth 2 is like my favorite team book right now. So go ahead and go with yours.
See, here's why. The reason Earth 2 is number 2 spot for me and World's Finest is number 1 spot is because of the team aspect. Now, Earth 2 is still building their team. They're still coming together. In the universe, they've done a wonderful job creating this universe, and it's a very short period of time. I'm already connected to it, and I understand it, and I see where the heroes are coming from, and I love seeing these heroes grow into the point where Alan is actually asking Hawkgirl for help. But the fact that World's Finest is already a solid, cohesive unit is why I gave them the number 1 spot. Earth 2 is growing into that team, and I love the growth of the JSA or of the team or whatever they're going to call themselves in this universe. I love seeing that. And it's great characters, great character development, but the fact, because we already have this solid team in World's Finest between Power Girl and Huntress, is why I gave them the number 1 spot. Because each title is giving me this great feel of this other universe, these wonderful heroes, and I'm loving the growth and development of them.
Earth 2 for me, it's my number 1 spot. Alan Scott and Hawkgirl, you mentioned that moment where he went to her. That moment had so much meaning for me because he'd been denying that for so long. He wanted to go solo, especially after his loss. And to find out that he wasn't the target, and to have to go to Hawkgirl for help and say, I need your help tracking down, it was something like he had to kind of suck it up after everything he said, and I love those moments in it. Jay Garrick and his mom, and Jay Garrick having to deal with the fact that I've got to keep my mom safe. How do I do this and help out with the whole Dr. Fate helmet thing? It was something, I love the Dr. Fate concept, as you and I have discussed many times before on the show. And I like the idea we've got a new Dr. Fate here. There's a rich history being explored, that they're pulling in all of the right elements of Dr. Fate. I like seeing this ground floor introduction of these characters. It's, to me, I love classic JSA. I love the rich history of the classic JSA. If you're going to introduce these characters, you've got to introduce them in a way where you're building a legacy, long-form storytelling. You've got the Atom, gradual introductions of the Sandman, Mr. Terrific, both versions. This is easily my favorite team book, and it eclipses everything else with what it does, just because, and that's one of the great things about comics. We can approach books and feel books differently. Like your reasoning for World's Finest being where it is for you, I'm like sitting here, I can't argue with a single thing that he's saying. He's digging it that way. That's really cool. I got no problem with that at all. For me, Earth 2, I think the anticipation of finally having this back with how much JSA I've read, going back to my childhood with the original JLA, JSA crossovers, there was something magical about these characters. And James Robinson, I think, is doing a great job. This also brings back the multiverse concept for me. And I like a book that's taking place on another world, and that world is not beholden to anything that's going on in the New 52. They're doing their own thing. I think it's great. I'm really loving it. I love that there's a legacy of the Trinity a part of this. It's just a great title. There's nothing that you and I have to say about any of this that contradicts each other. We're just seeing it slightly differently, and that's really cool. I think it's a great discussion point on it. And I think from here you just want to jump probably right into what you're going to say about World's Finest. So go ahead.
Well, the thing with, as I said, it's funny, as you're talking, I'm completely agreeing with you. And it's the interesting thing about our argument is we agree with each other, but we're just arguing one small little point. Mm-hmm. And it's especially the Flash stuff. And the Flash was a really tough one for me not to make it the number 1, just seeing him step up as a hero. But for me on World's Finest was when they started going through the backstories. And especially Huntress, with her, when she first put on the costume, with the death of her mother, then the death of her father, and just everything that played out through that, I was like, oh man, this is some great stuff. And then you get the Huntress and Damian connection. I absolutely so loved that moment of the two children of Batman bonding like no one else could. And especially the Requiem issue where we see Huntress grieve over his death, go to his grave, and she's sitting there, and Bruce is like, what the heck's going on here? And, Power Girl has to swoop in and, for the save, because that would not be the best time for a meeting. Hey, alternate Earth dad, sorry you just lost your son. I lost my dad. It would have been a very awkward meeting.
But she emotionally also, she was so broken up and choked up over it, she couldn't handle it. I'm with you. That is such a great moment in that. I love that issue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That was such a powerful moment. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I know, and it was these type of things they really put, for me, World's Finest at the top spot. Mm-hmm. This is one of those titles when they first announced World's Finest. I'm like, oh, okay, they'll do another Batman. So, they're doing Huntress and Power Girl. Nice. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then as it's slowly growing that it's going to be Earth 2 coming over. And then they start going through the past, the backstories. I was like, man, this is some great stuff here. And it was, as the title is going on, as it's growing, I get that same enjoyment, that same, yes, I must have more of this. I want more, stories. I want more backstory. I want what's going on. And it's funny. They're characters that are lost in this universe that I don't want to see go back to Earth 2. I want them to stay here. I want to see them interact. I want to see that Batman Huntress interaction. I want to see that moment. I want to see Superman and Power Girl interaction. I want to see that moment. There's so much that, to look forward to in this title that I'm like, yes, this is cool.
It's another Paul Levitt's book with a great art team. I mean, there's a shifting art team that's been working on that book. And I think that the whole book that dynamic works. It feels modern day classic DC, and that's something that I really like about that. It's giving me a fix of something that feels very classic. And it's funny how that Earth 2 is new, in the sense that the way that it's been kicked off, but there's something about World's Finest that those characters have a sense of longevity. Like, they feel like veterans when they work together. I like that their friendship doesn't feel new. They've known each other for a long time. There's a history there. That there's something about that I'm finding engaging too. I agree with you on the established friendship. So you're right. I really don't feel like, I don't even feel like it's safe to say that we have a disagreement here. It's just our placement's different just because of personal preference. I think we see both titles very similarly in the way that we're presenting them. And when you were talking about your reasoning for World's Finest, I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Dude's right. That team up is great. But do you feel that there's something classic about the relationship and that longevity as well? This feels like a classic book.
Oh God, yeah. Completely agree with you on that. There is a longevity type of feel with it. They have been friends for a long time. They've known each other and they work well with each other, and their personalities accentuate each other. And I think that is, for me, is one of the keys on a team up. This is a team unit. This isn't okay, let's work together here. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. No, this is a team. This is a team of two, but it's still a cohesive unit, and I love seeing that.
Jim, let's go. Do you have anything else from that category?
Well, actually, yeah, I do.
Okay.
One of the things I'm a little bit miffed about, and it's something I wish would happen. I wish we'd get more Mr. Terrific.
Oh, yeah.
He's a title that, he's going to be in Earth 2. Okay, yeah. I want him to have his own title again. I wish he's on Earth 2. Let's retry this again. He's in a different location. Maybe Mr. Terrific on Earth 2 would work out better. Kind of like a flip-flop World's Finest where the one Earth went to Earth 2 people went to our Earth and they're dealing with that. Well, let's have the flip-flop where the one Earth goes to Earth 2 and then he's got to survive and deal with that. I think it would work, and he's a title I really wish hadn't gone away. I love the character, and yes, he'll be on Earth 2, in the Earth 2 title, and there'll be appearances of him, but I think he's a character that should have his own title.
This is, I made a gone but not forgotten category, and I think this is probably the best time. Did you do a category like this?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. I think, why don't we just throw this in here, because you're kind of going on this point, and I agree with it. I just did 5 titles that I'm like, these are like the top 5 that I'm really sad are not here or have been announced to be canceled. Number 5 was Legion Lost for me. Number 4 was Mr. Terrific. For a lot of the reason that you're saying, like, I want to see more of the Explorations character. Amen on where you went with that. I really felt like I wanted to see his book because I liked his going to these weird places, and it would have been great to see the culmination of that with him now being and taking place in Earth 2. Like, there would have been a logical progression for that book. I mean, I'm glad that his book ended that way, but I'm like, no, I want the next issue. Like, where does that go for him? And so we're ditto, like Mr. Terrific Volume 2 is a product we need. Number 3 was Savage Hawkman for reasons that I've stated. I just felt like the book's finally gotten to the place that it is and it's being canceled. I know it's still being published now, but it's on the chopping block. That's gone. It's another one. Number 2 is OMAC. I don't know what your feeling was on this title, but for me, OMAC was just such a breath of fresh air. I never got a chance to read classic OMAC. It was another character that I read when he was in like various appearances, but I never really got to read him. That was another title I talked about, World's Finest, how I liked the classic feel to it. OMAC had that classic feel to it. And I really loved that this was a guy, when he became OMAC, it took over his life and kind of affected his whole life. So that was kind of where I was at with that one. And then Captain Atom, mainly because what a great mix of great writing and stylized art to do something and deliver it unique. And, why don't you go ahead with what where you were at as far as those? But, I didn't have a ton to say about those, other than I just want to do a quick list of titles that I was really disappointed to see canceled.
We had very similar lists, as I said, mentioned with Mr. Terrific, and I completely co-sign your statements on Captain Atom. I wish that was still around. He kind of made the character is still in existence in the Legion of Superheroes universe, but I would rather see Captain Atom. I liked that. I liked where they were going with it. The only name I would add to your list was Blue Beetle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in Threshold, but as I said before, I want Jaime. I want his character, and I want to see him come back to Earth, so we'll get his support cast. And even if he's in Teen Titans, we won't really get to see his support cast. We won't get to see that side of him. And that, I think, is part of the strength of that title. And that was something I always enjoyed about it, that he has a different feel to him. There is something. He's not, Clark Kent. He's not Bruce Wayne. He's Jaime Reyes. He's his own person. And I miss that. I wish we could get him back.
Want to go on to our miscellaneous titles?
Yeah.
So where did you start off with this one? These were books, for everyone to understand. Miscellaneous were titles that really didn't seem to fit into other categories that, have been around since the beginning of the New 52, even if they were canceled. But they were titles that really didn't seem to fit heavily into one other line. They may have technically had a link to a line, but they weren't a part of the crossover of that world or something. So we plugged them in here. So what did you come up with your list, Jim?
Well, starting off, Team 7. We get to see really, the Wall. And we see her in Suicide Squad, but here we get a chance to see the early versions of her. We get to see the birth of Amanda Waller, really, in my mindset. And this was something that I really enjoyed the title, and I like seeing how it's going through. Especially we get to see Dinah, her early versions of her, as well as Grifter. This is a good title, and it was a fun read.
Number 5 for me was Suicide Squad. And it's funny how, I walked into this book with such a bias because, huge Secret Six fan. One of my all-time favorite titles of any book is Secret Six. So I guess I kind of walked into this one with the bias that, this is taking the place of Secret Six. And it's not. I really needed to remind myself that this is a reinventing of the Suicide Squad, not a reinventing of Secret Six. And there's really two different concepts at work here. Once I started getting into that and accepting that, it's funny how it took me a few issues to really kind of see what was going on. I kind of stockpiled this book for a bit. I sat down and I started getting caught up on it. I'm like, oh my gosh. What have I been thinking? I love things like the relationship with Deadshot and Harley Quinn. I like that they've teased deaths. People have died. They've all of a sudden somehow come back. You don't know what's going to happen in this book. I like that these people don't necessarily like each other, all of them. They're crazy. They're criminals. They've got exploding collars on their neck. They're constantly trying to survive when they're put in situations where they are expendable. It reminds me of, it's supposed to remind me of the film The Dirty Dozen, which I'm a huge fan of. And it just kind of totally fits there. I like Waller's use here. It's gritty. It's everything that I really am just digging about this. There was rumors of a game spinning out of this. I don't know if that's still on the table or not, because I haven't heard anything in a long time about that. I know when the New 52 started, there was rumors that was going to happen. But boy, would it make a great game. I really am digging the book. And it's a book that at the beginning, I know my bias was because I was a Secret Six fan, and I wasn't letting this book breathe on its own for being what it is. Once I accepted that it was, and I think Deadshot being a part of it was really what my bias was, because it's kind of a newish version of Deadshot. It's not the Deadshot I was reading in Secret Six. It's the same guy, but you know what I mean. Now, you're reading it. There's differences between it. Now that I've gotten into it, and I'm really digging this book now. The King Shark change too is a big one for me, but because those are two characters from Secret Six that I was really digging. But I've grown to really, really like this title and the variation on Harley Quinn in it. All that stuff's working for me now. It took me a while to get used to, but it's a title that really deserves some notice because I'm loving the exploration of the villains of the DC universe being used and manipulated. Captain Boomerang in this has been great as well.
My number 4 is Suicide Squad.
Oh, cool.
I was nodding my head along with you as you were going along, and especially when you start talking about Harley or Harleen or whichever one's in charge, you're not exactly sure, but you know what? You're getting some interesting stuff from her because she's an absolutely wonderful nut jobby, and you get a good villain story here, and you get a dark comedic moments. You get some nasty moments, and that's something that I enjoy. It's the different taste, the different touch of of a story that you need to have that. And it was funny, you were talking about how you had to get past the fact that this isn't Secret Six, and as soon as I'm nodding my head in agreement with you because I'm like yeah you're right. It's you got to make sure you get past that, and you got to understand this isn't that same title. Once I got past that, I could appreciate it, and I actually did some rereading back through the beginning, and I really started enjoying it more, and I started saying, you know what, okay, yeah, this is good, this is a good story.
I like the art too.
Yeah.
Which, I'll be honest with you, at the beginning I didn't. That was a shift for me. I think because of all the changes to the characters, that from the way that I liked them before the New 52, this was one where I really was having trouble getting used to new character designs. And once it clicked for me, it clicked. And I really appreciate the art style now in it, but I did not like it at first. So I will freely admit that was an issue for me as well. Now I love it. I think it's really, I love the style of it. And I'm with you. I did a rereading from the beginning, and when my head kind of changed and I had a different opinion of the book, it was funny how going back and rereading the initial issues had a very different impact on me. My number 4 was OMAC. And OMAC was one of those titles for me that I was excited about because I got the Kirby hardcover that they released of the OMAC series. That was one of those things that I had stockpiled. I hadn't read it yet. It's, one of the things that I wanted to get to. I have since read it, and I really love it. But this is a great opportunity to take some of those concepts from Kirby and bring them into present day. And I really liked how they did that. To me, I'm a big fan of when we see in and out of the costume character moments. And you talked about how you want to see more of this in Superman with the Daily Planet and stuff on our last episode. The OMAC was one of those I loved. That with OMAC, that we got to see real impact at the time when he was OMAC. Like, people were chastising him at work because he just vanished, for long periods of time. And there was an acknowledgement of that. And we don't get that enough in comics, that, like, these people, when they do this stuff, especially if they're gone during the day, like, he was turning into OMAC on, like, a smoke break. I mean, what was that all about? I thought that was great. It was, and I liked that it was having impact on his relationship. It had an impact at work. It was, this guy was, on again, off again. I mean, this is a guy that, like, I think I work with somebody like that. I think I work with somebody who's OMAC. It would explain a lot. I don't get to see this person as OMAC, but I'm convinced this person's OMAC.
You just got to go up to him and say, activate. See what they do.
Just not around my classroom, right?
I wouldn't suggest it, but hey, you're going to do what you're going to do.
I loved the book though, and that was a cancellation when it hit. It was a hard blow for me. I was glad that OMAC went on and continued on afterwards and went into Justice League International, but that was a book that when it left, I was really sad to see OMAC go. What'd you do for number 3?
Well, my number 3 is Birds of Prey. This has been a steady growth for me. I've really enjoyed the characters, and it's funny because, as I mentioned back in the last episode, when we were talking about the Talons and Mary and how Mary's now on the team and Batgirl's now on Birds of Prey, and I'm getting the, it's like, that's kind of neat. And then the Team 7 title came out, and I got a backstory on Dinah. I'm like, okay, yeah, she's not the same character I knew and loved, but you know what? This is a cool character. I get her. I get her groove. I understand where she's coming from. And it's, again, this is another one of those titles I had to say in my head, this isn't Gail Simone's Birds of Prey. Look at it as its own. Look at its own strength, its own merit. And as soon as I really started doing that, I'm like, you know what? This is a good title. This is a neat team. I like what they're doing with this. And it made a dramatic change once I can get that little bit, that one little thing just out of my head saying, no, look at it, judge it for how it stands, for what is the story it's telling you now. And again, the Court of Owls crossover was great. I like seeing them dealing with the Talons that way. Again, it laid down the groundwork for having Mary in the book. This has been a really cool story and definitely a solid read for me.
Let me just jump to my number 2. It's funny how a lot of what I said about Suicide Squad applies to Birds of Prey. I had trouble with this book initially because I was a huge Birds of Prey fan going back to Chuck Dixon when that book originally was introduced. I've loved it all the way through. And then we got Gail Simone on board, and that was the title that made me love Gail Simone. And we had Gail Simone leave and then come back on the book again. And it just there was something about that concept that I just loved. So it was reimagined in the New 52. I'm like, it's just not the same thing. And I had real trouble getting my head wrapped around it. But once I did, again, loved this to death. Starling and Dinah and Katana and Poison Ivy. And I love the turn of Poison Ivy when that happened. And Barbara eventually joining the team was great. I liked that she wasn't on initially, though. And I liked the concept with Dinah running because she felt that she killed her husband, us learning the truth along the way, and all that stuff tying into Team 7. Then when that book was introduced, it became a great read, a book that I really started to love because these characters started to become a family. And when Poison Ivy did what she did, really became difficult. I liked the use of Katana here. She was a whole bunch of crazy. And yet these guys trying to realize her import and trying to realize what she's going through and to help her and support her through all that, I thought was really great. It's made me a fan of the Katana book that's out now because I liked her so much in Birds of Prey and the development there. So, and I agree with you on the new Talon coming into this book. I think it's a great solution to, like, you're losing Katana to the Justice League and having her own title. It's great to have this Talon come onto the book and be a part of it as well. Mary is I think, a fantastic character. So that wound up being in my number 2 spot. It was a long journey to get there, though, because it's a title that at first I was kind of like, and it was another one that I stockpiled because I just was having trouble kind of getting into it. But then once I kind of cleared my head and started to see it as a unique concept from the beginning, it started to have a feel of what I like about Birds of Prey again. And and it was funny when Batgirl came onto the team. That was when I went back and kind of started from the beginning again and just kind of like, okay, let this stockpile for a little bit. Let me go back to the beginning and kind of see where I'm at on it. And it's funny how the book started to grow on me, and I started to really have a lot of fun with it. Initially I thought I gave it an open-minded chance initially, but it kind of fell off, and then it fell right back on for me. And reading it from the beginning, it's really just a well-written title, well-crafted, and it's not a stockpile book now. I can't wait to read it when it comes out. It's turned into a really great read.
My number 2, actually flip-flop back and forth between 2 and 3. And finally I finally decided to go with it in the number 2 spot and put Birds down in 3. It is Jonah Hex, All-Star Western. this has been month in, month out an enjoyment for me. And it's with him in Gotham and him in Arkham. I'm liking the current location. I'm liking the stories they're going with. And I like how they're playing with the Western, universe. Will he eventually go out west? Will he eventually deal with something else, completely kick Arkham and Gotham to the curb? Probably. I'll enjoy that as well. Jonah Hex is a character that I still to this day kick myself for not reading it as much as I've read on him. That I'm like, what was my hesitation? Why wasn't I getting it? And I'm still appreciative to you and to my brother for saying, dude, you're an idiot. Read this. You will really enjoy this character, because I really do enjoy this character. He is just that there is something neat about him. There's this great Western stories. There's this hardcore man who just takes nothing from nobody, and when he gets into a fight, yes, he's outgunned, he's outnumbered, there's no possible way any normal person could pull it off, but Jonah will, just because he's just too dang stubborn to die.
My number 3 title was Talon. And one of the things that I really love about Talon is, first of all, it came out of that great crossover. It takes an opportunity for us to really get in the head of somebody who had to rebel against the Talons, or the court, I should say, and was, for his unique talents, was brought into the court, was given a chance to become their assassin for that time, escaped, wound up with the potential to be one of their greatest of all time, and denied that, escaped all that. I like how in this one he's got helpers from people who have remorse for their time on the court, and kind of recognize what was wrong about it, and are like, we understand why you're escaping. I want to help you. I want, and that's something that I just really enjoyed about the series. This whole Court of Owls, Night of Owls thing that happened with the Batman books was great, and I loved the extension of it. I hearken it back to what I liked after Nightfall, Night's End, and all that, when Azrael got his own title. It was kind of a chance to now, okay, we've gone through this whole event. They introduced this concept of St. Dumas and all the history that Azrael had. Now we're going to actually get a chance to heavily just explore that concept with that character and how that character fits into the universe. We're getting this with this Talon book, and I'm really loving it, and it easily deserves my number 3 spot for miscellaneous, because I had a tough time not putting it in the Bat family, but I don't know, to me it's its own thing, and it kind of deserves its own unique place. It doesn't really belong in that line, even though it kind of comes from there. And I get your because you put it on your list as being part of the miscellaneous, and I agree with your placement. It belongs here, and it definitely belongs in number 3. I had trouble between this and Birds of Prey deciding which would fit my number 2 spot. And I'm still, even as we're having this discussion right now, having a lot of trouble with that.
I actually put Talon in the surprise for me. Mm-hmm. And it's, when the concept was introduced, I was like, oh, that could be kind of neat. It'd be kind of interesting. But I was actually very worried about that it would end up being like a freak of the week, where, okay, which part of the Talons is he taking out? Which part of the Court of Owls is he taking down this week? And I'm very pleased to see that it's not been that way. And that's where my surprise comes from, that we're getting this solid character creation. We're getting support structure for him. We're getting a continuation. And I look at Talon, and this title has longevity. This has legs. When they first introduced the concept, I didn't know how much legs it would have. I thought it'd be a short, brief run. Oh, okay, that's kind of a neat flesh-out story of Court of Owls, flesh-out story of Talons. Yeah, that'd be kind of neat. But now I'm thinking long-term. I'm looking long-term where the character can go with this, what they can do. Maybe they will actually be able to take out the Court of Owls. Maybe they will actually be able to destroy this indestructible force. And I'm like, wow, that's a neat concept, a neat idea. That this is a non-Batman character, because he's born in Gotham, but he's not a Batman character, taking out the Batman villain and operating, within Gotham, operating within a Gotham-related type of story arc. And I thought that was a really cool surprise and a really neat enjoyment of it.
One of the cool things about that, with the way the court works too, is what worldwide options are there for this character. And I'd like to see him operate beyond just the court as stories go on. Where else can this character go other than where he is. And that's where, like Azrael had, the original run of Azrael had like a 100-issue run. And I would love to see something happen with Talon like that, because I think it's a cool concept. And seeing this character kind of grow beyond his original programming and edict and stuff like that is a lot of what I liked about the Azrael comic. And I'm glad we're seeing a gradual movement with this character. So I'm with you. I think there's a lot of leg room for this guy to grow beyond where he's at. And there's a lot of potential there. And I hope the character gets a chance to see that, because I'm really digging the book.
My number one for this was Deathstroke. I love this guy. He is absolutely just this nasty villain killer, who's got the code of honor. And he's got his own little stylings to him that puts him in my top 10. And I really do hate liking this book just because he is such a nasty person. He has no problem killing women and children, and I shouldn't be enjoying him. I shouldn't be enjoying death and destruction as much as I do when I'm reading the title, but there's some great stuff that has gone through. The creative teams have had a nice, I don't want to say subtle touch, but it is a subtle touch to, you could very easily make this character so nasty that there's no way you can sympathize with him. And they take it to that line and they push it right at the point where you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. Oh, that's interesting. And they have a different way. And then seeing him interact with characters. His Hawkman crossover was absolutely wonderful. I loved seeing Hawkman in this. I loved their interactions and how everything played out through that. I was like, this is a good usage of the characters, of both characters, and he's somebody I want to continue seeing in the DC universe.
I've liked Deathstroke a lot. My big problem with the book has been I really liked what Kyle Higgins was doing with him in the beginning. And where there was the creative shift from that book, it's for some reason that book kind of dropped for me. I'm with you in that crossover all of a sudden made me rethink that title. It didn't make my top 5 list for this, but I'm with you in, and I know like our viewpoint of Deathstroke in general has been you're more into the character than I am, and I think that's cool. But it's been one of those, I really love the initial kickoff with Kyle Higgins, and the Kyle Higgins run would have made my top 5. I feel like this run is something I'm more into now since the Hawkman crossover. For some reason, it started clicking for me, and I think I just like really got into it then. And it's another book that I'm sad that's being canceled because I'm feeling like I'm getting back into Deathstroke again after I've kind of been away from enjoying it. And I'm sad to see that book going. My number 1 was All-Star Western. And I've really got to say, first of all, ditto to everything you said. Jonah Hex, Arkham, great art, wicked cool storytelling. This book is one of those that, like, I honestly, if I had to go down to a top 10 list of only 10 books that I could get, this would have to be in there. If I had to go down to 5 books, I don't know how I would do that. I would have a lot of trouble not putting this book in there. It is, to me, one of those titles that I would love to see this one promoted on Western sites. People that enjoy classic Westerns, enjoy Western novels and things like that, because I think there's an audience base for Jonah Hex in general and All-Star Western that has not realized that comics like this are being published. I love the use of putting Arkham in it to give it a Gotham connection, to show like a rich history of Gotham. I liked the Court of Owls crossover that this thing had. I thought it was really, really great. And, it was one of those things that could be read very independently of that. It just gave a sense of history to them. But, Jonah's whole viewpoint on the world in general, this is very much like a title that I feel like everything that happened in the Jonah Hex pre-New 52 series happened, and this is just a continuation of that. It's such a great run, really great characters, gorgeous art, and there's nothing but compliments that I have for this series. It just remains edgy and wicked cool. It's it's one of those titles that I don't know that it wouldn't make my overall top 5 list of comics right now. I would have a very tough time putting that list together. And that would be one, if I couldn't put it in my top 5, it would really hurt. So I don't know where that falls on that. I don't even want to try making a top 5 list because that would be painful at the moment. My biggest surprise in this category was DC Universe Presents. I mean that totally as a compliment. I love that book. I've loved the rotation of different storylines. It's one of those that I have a real hard time, because of the fact that it's shifting creators and shifting storylines from time to time, on where to place that. Because obviously from storyline to storyline, how interested I am in the book will shift. Sometimes it's really top of the stack. Sometimes it's a nice middle of the stack read that I'm enjoying. But I love this book. I love the concept of it. I really think it's an important title for DC to be able to get concepts out there that you can't normally do in a regular title. And I just wanted to shout that book out as being one that I really, really enjoyed. One of the storylines that stands out for me as one of my all-time favorites was the Vandal Savage one. In that, I think it was just a great, great storyline. And it's a title that it didn't make my top. I don't know I shouldn't say that it didn't make my top 5 list. I don't know how you put a title like this in a list because of the rotating stories, but I like that about it. It's something I've always liked about Legends of the Dark Knight. It's a chance for creators to have a freedom to tell storylines. I like the Challenges of Unknown thing that went in there too. I thought that was really great.
Oh God, yeah. I agree with you on the DC Universe Presents. It's definitely is a cool story, and it was another one I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I have been, but it's something that's annoyed me, is a little bit angered me, is stories involving combat stories, but non-superhero, non-mystic tanks, just regular everyday Joes fighting, and just the regular everyday real life adventures. I know they've tried this multiple times, multiple different titles, and they never last. And it's probably sales oriented, and I get it. But I wish someone could figure out the balance and could keep an ongoing story like this together, where we get these real life adventure stories.
I'm with you. I would like that kind of stuff too. It's funny. I don't know that they would make any of my top 5 lists, but like the war comics, when they started getting them going, I liked those books a lot. Like they were never on the chopping block for me. For me, they wound up being like kind of in a middle section. They were never on the low end. I especially that Men of War. I liked that book when it was originally out. It didn't, like I said, it didn't make any of my top 5 lists, and I'm not going to try to throw it in one now. But I loved it. I thought it was a good book. It just kind of fit as a unique thing that kind of fell in the middle of my reading stack, and I was always glad when it came out. I would like to see more stuff like that. I'm with you. I guess sales number wise, it's just not working, but I like those kind of stories as well. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
And I like those books. I mean, that's just honestly where they placed for me, but that's not a bad thing. They're in the stack. They were never. It was nothing I ever read. I was like, I've got to read this for the show. Honestly, I would drop if there's anything I was reading right now that I felt like, I've got to read this for the show. I would read it initially to say that I read it for the show, and then I would drop it. There were things that I picked up along the way because I initially thought I was reading it for the show, and I wound up really liking it. That's a great book, a great example of that, where I found that I really enjoyed that book. So I'm with you. Do we want to go to... You made up a category called Animated Other Media, and this was really for titles that came off of television series, animated series, games, things like that. So do we want to kind of go into this category?
Oh, sure.
And where'd you start off with this?
Well, for me, I looked at the Superman Family Adventure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, this type of stories are kind of fun for me, and it's... I've mentioned palate cleansers before, and this is kind of one of those stories, but it's not just throwaway stupid. It's actually, there's some good stuff that makes me laugh. I enjoy reading it. It's not like insulting to me. And sometimes when you start looking at, all age appropriate, or you start looking at children's comics or something, people will say, I don't know. Serious readers can actually get something out of this. Adult readers can get something out of it. And I think that's the strength of this title and the strength of the creative team. They know how to do that. They know how to make it enjoyable for all ages.
I'm going to go start with that, and I put that in my number 2. And I'm a big fan of Art and Franco. I supported they did a Kickstarter for All Yeah Comics, their all ages comics, which was very successful and people were jumping in. And there's a reason. It's really hard to do great, accessible, all ages comedy. This has a Pixar feel for me. And that's the best way that I can put Superman Family Adventures. I'm a big fan of the Pixar films. And one of the things I love about the Pixar films is they can be watched on an adult level. They can be watched on a family level. There's inside jokes, and I think this is true of Tiny Titans and Superman Family Adventures. The way that these books work is that there's enough inside jokes for longtime comic fans that you get the wink and the nod and all that stuff, and you chuckle and you smile and they make you happy. But then there's also a great accessibility to it. And the teacher side of me, their material in general, I'm just going to kind of editorialize about their material in general. I pick that's every one of their trades up. I put them in my classroom. My kids beat them up to a level that you would not imagine because they're being passed around so much. They're in this kid's desk, that kid's desk. They're asking who has that book now. Probably the most sincere compliment you can give that series is that you've got kids who clearly don't read comics, reading those comics and loving them. They're, in my eyes, all ages material like that because it's accessible to people like you and me, and it's enjoyable to people like you and me, but also accessible to a younger crowd and readable. I wish they were being published differently. I wish they went straight to trade, straight to hardcover. I look at Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is incredibly popular right now. My kids pre-order these books. I guarantee you my same kids that are pre-ordering Diary of a Wimpy Kid would pre-order this if it was published in a similar format and put out that way and promoted that way. It's that type of crowd that would really dig that. It would make for a great animated feature then. Those Diary of a Wimpy Kid films are doing very well because the kids are very into the books right now. This would be a great opportunity for them to be, Captain Underpants did well like that. Super Diaper Baby. There's all kinds of great books that my kids are digging and enjoying that are more of a comic book feel to them. That you have a great opportunity to fish this stuff into that kind of audience, and it's quality material. My kids love the work of Art and Franco, and that goes to their Patrick the Wolf Boy as well. I grabbed their All Yeah comics for me because it's the initial issues. I don't take my singles to classroom. So if I'm ordering them, I'm ordering for me. Make no mistake on that, because single issues, they don't last more than 10 minutes in my room. They're going to be ripped to shreds. You put those in one classroom desk, I just can't handle it. For some reason, I can take a trade paperback having to retape on the cover. I can't do that with single issues. It's my own thing. But I'm really, really glad to see that they're doing their own line of All Yeah comics because I love Superman. I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of editorializing right here, but I do feel like I want to see more DC all ages material because I enjoy reading them, because I think they're a great jumping on point for kids. I think there needs to be more things available that families can read together. I like sitting around the lunch table and talking Tiny Titans with my students. They will draw Tiny Titans, Patrick the Wolf Boy, and Superman for me because they've seen these characters in the work of Art and Franco. So, I don't know. I can't recommend their work highly enough. And Pixar is probably the best comparison that I can give for that. Things like Shrek and stuff like that. They're in that comedy vein. I love that kind of film material. Ice Age. Those movies that kids are really into right now that are accessible to adults as well. This fits into that category, and it made my number 2 spot because of that. I'm sorry, I know I'm derailing you. What was your next one? What did you go for number 4? I'll go back to my number 5 afterwards.
Well, the anime. Amikami. Just that series that came out, and I enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of a neat... a neat look and a neat styling to it. And it was something I was like, oh, okay. This, again, it was something a little bit different. I enjoy anime, so I enjoy that art style. So that was, it was one of those, it's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool.
That was my number 5, Amikami Girls. And it's, they had me at grade Palmiotti. So, when they're writing anything, I have so much confidence in them that I will just jump on anything that they do. And I did that digitally. So I was, doing the 99-cent an issue thing with that. I really liked it. I liked that release style for it. It seems to work. I'm sitting here, I'm digging this thing that was released from statues, because it was a statue first.
Yeah.
And they did that, and it ended up, it really was great. It was fun. It was an accessible, exciting read. It read great because it was another one that I could read a couple issues together and just really kind of enjoy it that way. Initially, when I read it, I was getting it because it was Gray and Palmiotti. I didn't read the first arc because they were releasing it in a character-by-character basis. And I ended up just sitting down and reading it together when it was finished because I'm like, okay, they're doing a new one now. So I wanted to stay caught up with it, so I was going in the right order because the minis built off each other. So when they shifted to a new character, it was actually a continuation of the storyline from the first character until they went to the whole Amikami Girls book, or where it went to that afterwards. But it was a great way to introduce each of the characters while continuing the storyline on as they introduced another character. And I really liked that delivery method. I found that to be a lot of fun. And the artwork was always great. They would shift to new art teams with each new storyline, but it still felt like, it's part of the same series and everything. And I really loved the delivery method and I agree with you that belongs on the list. What'd you do for number 4?
Batman Beyond. With the whole Beyond universe and everything that happened with Batman, just the continuation of that animated story and just when it came out, I was like, this is kind of a neat, again, it's a neat take on Batman. It's a fun read. And I was like, okay, I'm liking this universe.
Did you get just the Batman Beyond, or did you get Justice League Beyond and Superman Beyond too?
I got when I say Batman Beyond, I probably should say the Beyond universe.
Okay,
I probably should word it that way.
My number 4,
it was the overall, all of the universe together is what I'm talking about. It's a pretty neat concept and pretty neat stories.
That was your number 3, actually, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I forgot that I jumped ahead with the number 2. My number 4 is Arkham Unhinged. I was a big fan of the Arkham City games, and this really is because they actually did a finale, and I forget the title of it right now. They did a Batman Arkham City finale arc for a while there that was released separately, and then it jumped back into this book. It's a continuation of the universe from the 2 games. And I really enjoyed that game universe was developed. I like that this storyline is expanding upon that. It's not a retelling of what was going on there. It's filling in the gaps. It's telling the background. It's telling where the stories go beyond that. Filling in with characters that maybe just make a guest appearance in there. And I really like that because I think those games, Paul Dini did a great job in both of those games doing the storyline. All the creative involved in the games did a great job. In the comic, it's doing that same thing, delivering that high-quality storytelling that I really loved in the game. It all feels relevant. It's very worth my time, so I've been really enjoying that. And it continues to be published, and I'm really enjoying it. What'd you do for your number 2?
My number 2, and to be honest, I just realized I messed up, so I'm going to combine. I have 6 titles in the 5-title category.
Oh, go for it.
I meant to eliminate one of them, and I forgot to. So you're going to get all 6. So next up for me is Green Lantern animated series. This, the cartoon, I've loved the cartoon. The comic came out. I was like, let me read this. And again, it falls in that same category of the palate cleanser. It falls in that same category of I'm having fun when I read this. I'm liking this. It's not, it's not little kids dying. It's not, serious. There's a fun to it. There's an enjoyment to it. There's this nice, calm, and relaxing that happens to me when I read it.
It's funny. My number 3 is Arrow. For all the joking I was doing earlier with you on the whole Justice League Weekly thing, one of the things I love about Arrow is that it's a weekly fix of this television show that I'm loving so much. So I was teasing because I was being a putz, but I really love Arrow because when the series is on reruns or it's on hiatus, they haven't gotten to the new episodes yet. This is giving me a fix and expanding upon the world of this television series that I think has just been an absolute home run. And it's another one that I'm reading digitally. And actually, that's a funny thing with this category. Everything I pulled out of here, with the exception of Superman Family Adventures, I'm reading digitally for this particular category because they're being in a digital first release. And this Arrow has just been, I can't wait till a new issue's out. I jump to it right away. I like that they're just really contained. It was great to have Juan on to talk about the creation of that because I was a huge fan of it. And when Daryl Taylor was kind enough to mention, hey, remember Juan's going to be doing some inking on Arrow. You want to have him on to talk about it? I'm like, oh, yeah, I do, because I'm already digging this book. And it's great to have somebody that we know that's going to be doing the ink work on it because I would love to talk about what the process is like to create something like this because it's just such a great series. So, I don't know, just for me, as a fan of the TV show, I think it's just a great example of how to do good media tie-in.
Next up for me is Smallville. This has been, it's the continuation of the TV show I loved, and I'm so happy that it's not dead, it's not gone. I still get more of my, the adventures, and it lives on, and I'm so happy that it's doing that.
My number 1 was Smallville, season 11. For everything you just said, I'm loving the storyline. I like the way the storyline is shifting between what's going on with Martian Manhunter and Batman, what's going on right now with Superman and Chloe, and what's going on with Green Arrow and what the Flash. And it's just a great, great book. There's a real sense of danger to the series. I like what Luthor has done to Clark and how that's kept him away from Lois. It's just a fantastic series. If you were somebody that was a fan of Smallville and you're not reading this, it's a great read. It's another one that I'm reading digitally. I can't wait till each issue comes out because, it's, again, I'm continuing the serialized Smallville storytelling, and it's just really, really fantastic. Can I throw in my biggest surprise?
Hold on, I got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, because you had 6. That's right.
Yeah. Let me explain. I listed the stuff, and then I did this all in an Excel spreadsheet, and the one spot has my comments. The next spot next to it is my ranking. And I completely messed up the order that I was going to read these in, by the way.
Okay.
My number 1 is Arrow, and it's for all of the pretty much those same reasons you were giving before, where this is a great, I'm loving the TV show. I'm getting more adventures. I'm getting more action on it. I'm shifting over how I'm getting Smallville and Arrow. I'm getting them both now digitally. I'm going to stop getting the actual paper of them. I'm going to start going with the digital medium on it because, one, get it right away, and 2, I'm going to start shifting some of the stuff I'm going to get in format and in a different format. And my real order on this was supposed to be Arrow, number 1, Smallville 2, Green Lantern 3, 4, Superman Family, Batman Beyond, the Beyond universe, and then the Ami. I kind of messed up how I was reading them off, and I'm like, oh, crud. Oh, well, just drive through.
My biggest surprise was, one, I don't have a game system right now. I upgraded my PC, and I just made the choice to say, you know what, it's... I've been buying a lot of the games digitally from Steam and stuff like that when they do these Steam summer sales, and just doing gaming that way, just as a way to kind of work on my budget for comics to be able to read the comics that I want to read. I love gaming and all that, but, Steam does these insane summer sales where you can get an entire product catalog of a gaming company at sometimes $5 a game. And it's hard to pass up when you're getting, big budget releases at those prices. So I kind of like that delivery method. So that's been kind of a choice that I've been making so I can still do gaming while at the same time supporting Kickstarters and doing comic projects and things that I'm really enjoying for the show to make sure I can kind of do a balance of both. So one of the titles that I skipped that I wasn't going to read was Injustice, Gods Among Us. I wasn't going to read it all because I'm kind of like, it's for the upcoming game, and I kind of don't want to read it because, I'm afraid it's going to get me excited to purchase the game. I heard so many good things about the comic that I ended up picking it up. Oh my God, is it a good comic? The idea behind it is, it's a world where what happens when Lois Lane is killed, and Superman has to deal with the villain that did it. And Superman snaps. This is a Superman that was married to Lois. Superman snaps and realizes that the world as it is no longer acceptable, and he is going to reshape it the way it needs to be reshaped. And people are just going to get out. Like war, not allowed. Superman basically said, it's done. You are done. You're done fighting. How would Wonder Woman feel about that? Well, Wonder Woman's kind of like, deep down, I've been kind of waiting for you to say that. And this is what ends up happening. And the Justice League starts to get on board with that because it's Superman. But along the way, when they start seeing what's going on, who do you think is the one character that's kind of like, whoa, this can't happen?
I'm going to guess Bruce.
Yeah. And it leads into this whole... So the setup for the storyline is to explain why heroes would be fighting heroes, villains would be fighting villains, and that type of thing. And it's kind of a cool way to do it. I don't know if you've seen any of the images for this game, but and I want to talk about the game itself because I kind of looked at some of the previews for the game. They have sequences where they're fighting, and in the background, Atom Smasher from JSA and Giganta are fighting. If you punch your character a certain way, they can be hit all the way to Atom Smasher and Giganta, who will grab the character and throw them back.
Nice.
Yeah. So everything's, 3D with, these kind of like stuff that worked in games like Dead or Alive and stuff like that. So I got to admit, I'm highly interested in the game right now because of how good the comic book was, because it's been like introducing the storyline to it, regardless though of whether or not I go into that, because I'm really not looking to go into a game system right now. But the comic book itself, in and of itself, it's 11 issues in on the digital end, and it's just been a really, really great read. And it's an alternate universe, so it's, for those of you that like Elseworlds, it's great to read this as an Elseworlds storyline. It works on that level, and I'm really digging it. So it was a great comic book. It's a surprise. Technically, it would make my top 5 list because of how good it was, but I felt like it fits in the surprise category because it's one I was totally avoiding, and I heard the buzz from it, and I'm like, no, this is really cool. I want to shout this out on the show because I think it's really neat. And it's a great example of how, for 99 cents, I was able to start picking them up. I liked it so much that I hadn't read it, and it was like 9 issues in, so I went and got all the issues. After I read the first one, I'm like, oh, I want to kind of keep going. So I did. I ended up getting caught up in like one night because it's just a great read. So
now I'm interested. Now I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Because of the video game tie-in, I wasn't even thinking about getting it. But now you're talking like, ooh, maybe I will pick that up.
The comic's good. I'm not sure if I'm getting the game or not right now, to be honest with you. I'm kind of leaning towards the not, just because I've got a lot of games on my PC, and I'm just kind of really content to play that way right now. And honestly, time-wise, I don't have a lot of extra time for gaming, with the show and everything that I'm doing and stuff. And I've got stuff on my iPad, and I really don't need that. But the comic's good. In and of itself, I'm not going to stop reading the comic regardless of what I decide to do with the game, because I think it's a good comic. So it's a great example of how to do a good media tie-in that is, I think it's accessible to anybody. You don't need to play the game to read this, as far as I know, because so far cool. I haven't seen any reason not to. Jim, I don't think you did anything Vertigo on yours, did you?
No, I did not.
I'll just kind of do a quick Vertigo, just to kind of wrap us up, a quick Vertigo walkthrough, because I'm a big fan of Vertigo. So I just want to shout out a few things if I could, and I'll kind of do this quickly. I did a Vertigo top 5, and I kind of did it up to present day. And I wanted to look at the past year and my Vertigo experiences. And it's funny how at the last minute I had a shift. I had something that bumped into my number 5 spot that I really enjoyed. So I'm just going to kind of go with my current top 5. And this is just over the last year where I've been at on Vertigo. I did that Time Warp number 1 that was just released that I mentioned to you beforehand. This is an anthology of time travel related stories that are set in a Vertigo-y kind of style. So they've got things like Rip Hunter is in there. But then there's stories that are tried and true. Gail Simone has a story in there. A friend of the show named Tom King, who is we're gonna be doing something with Tom King to talk about this. And it's really not the reason why I put it in my top 5 list, because I could have easily left it out with it being new material. I liked it so much. It's an anthology book it's a $7.99 book that is huge, loaded with just great time travel storylines they're cool short stories all the way through, with creators who just really have some artsy fun with the concept of time travel. I don't want to spoil too much on it because I want to talk about, I know you got it too, I want to talk about it on the show, but it made the list because I liked it that much. Number 4 is Unwritten. Unwritten's a book that I have just adored, and it stayed consistently on my list as being one of the stories. It's what if Harry Potter, the guy who, Harry Potter was a real person, and that's the only way to put it, realizes that a lot of the things that he thought were in Dad's book about him were true. So Dad writes this magical book where you're this magical character, and the things that were in there, the adventures that he said you have, might have actually happened. And those characters might really exist. So you deal with what's real, my world that I thought was real, or the world that goes in there. And that's the best way to put the Unwritten. It's been a great story as it's gone along, and I'm just doing kind of a general overview of it because I want people to have a chance to kind of gel. Vertigo stuff really needs to be delved on from the beginning. And the great thing about Vertigo, I've always loved this about Vertigo, I think it's something, Brian Azzarello said at a convention once, that the traditional comic fan is not the target audience of Vertigo. And he wasn't saying that we're not an audience for Vertigo. What he was saying is the point of Vertigo a lot of times is to also appeal to the trade paperback bookstore crowd. Vertigo stories read naturally in hardcovers. A lot of the ways we talk about Walking Dead, that you and I like reading that, Vertigo reads really well that way. Unwritten is no exception. You can pick up, and I would recommend starting with Volume 1 of Unwritten, and just start reading it through and see if it's your cup of tea. You can get right on board. They do a great job of trading and collecting this. It's a great series. Lot 13 is my number 3. It would take a special book to take this spot because Unwritten was going to be originally my number 3. I dig great horror. This story's been fantastic so far. Books like this are what I love about Vertigo. When you start questioning what the characters are really seeing, and the ghost as well, and they're developed as well as the humans, to the point where you're like sitting in the humans who, like, you don't know whether or not the humans are going to live and die. There's real danger there. There's something that's really great about a story that's delved that way. I like good horror, and Lot 13 is no exception. Number 2 is Fables. Fables for me is anybody who's watching the TV show Once Upon a Time should be reading Fables. Fables is going to have a game that's actually coming out from Telltale. That's going to be, it looks like Bigby Wolf's going to be a big part of it. They just announced it. I love Fables because it's what would happen if the fairy tale characters existed in the real world and had to hide out here. There was still a world where they all came from, and there was an adversary that chased them out of that world. And we were lucky enough to have the great Bill Willingham join us on the show. This was one that I really had a tough time not putting in my number 1 spot because of how important it is to me. I love Fables. I've never dropped it in a million years. I think it's just an amazing book. It's one of those books that I don't know that I could part with. You know, it would be one that, like, if I had to make a top 5 list of comics, Fables would go to. I currently get singles for Fables, but Fables would go to then being a trade paperback hardcover read, and I would just keep getting it that way. You know, it would be one of those things where I'd ask for it for Christmas. I would do whatever I had to do to make sure I was still getting Fables. And I might do that as my route to getting it, but I would make sure I was still reading Fables. I'd ask for gift cards, for example, to be able to, you know, if it didn't go into my budget, just say, no, just give me gift cards for this because there's some comic trades I want to get. And I would get whatever the year's Fables releases were that I missed through that method, because that's one of the great things about Fables. My number 1 would be Sweet Tooth. I love Sweet Tooth. I love Jeff Lemire. You know, it takes the concept of what happens if you live in a world where mutations exist and people blame the mutations for the death of normal people. How do you deal with that? And, you know, how to deal with that if you're a mutation? And the question becomes, are you the cure for the mutations or are you the cause of the mutations? And, you know, you're a child that's thrust into all this. And that's really the concept of that story. It's really engaging because you have experimentation and you're like, these are still kids, you know, and there's something about that in a world where people don't appreciate people that are different. And you could see how people would be scared like this and what they would do. It's a great commentary on the human condition. You can't help but feel for the character of Sweet Tooth. And I don't know, there's something that I really just have always loved about that book. It's easily my number 1 favorite Vertigo title right now. My biggest surprise was Annotated Sandman. I'm a fan of this, and I hope that this is a successful series. What they're doing is they're releasing a high-quality hardcover that deeply analyzes the Sandman from the beginning. This is not meant to be your reading of Sandman. This is for people who own Sandman, have been reading Sandman, and really they're incredibly well-produced companions to any Sandman collection. They're pages of facts and behind-the-scenes details, things that you missed that were going on in the rich depth of the storytelling. Like, I tend to reread Sandman. I've read it now 4 times, Sandman, just for fun, because I really love Sandman. It's on my short list of, again, favorite comic series of all time. And I'm not tooting any horns here. There's so many people listening to this going, yeah, duh. You know, because they're in that same boat. But this would be something, if you're listening to me and you were one of those people going, duh, you know, on Sandman, this companion is something for you, because I would argue that the most devoted Sandman fan out there, and those of you that are listening that fit into that category where you're much more of a Sandman devotee than I am, you've analyzed it cover to cover, this book is for you. They go into such detail and depth. I guarantee you there's stuff in here that you missed. And they go into the themes that were throughout the book, throughout each arc, throughout certain sequences that you would have missed as a fan, hidden hierarchies and stuff that was going on. Just great, great material. I want to shout it out as just the gorgeous-looking books. The quality's high. My disappointment is I want more Vertigo. This is a line that pushes the boundaries and remains edgy. This is the line that should be pushing the digital market to a new reading audience as well. I would like to see more promotion being done to get this material into the hands of the non-traditional comic crowd. All this material is literature, as with most comics. Vertigo is a brand that spawned 100 Bullets, Sandman, Why the Last Man, Preacher, and so much more. The titles I listed are powerhouses. I remember a convention where Brian Azzarello said, that the comic fan is a traditional audience, so maybe they ought to think of Vertigo in a non-traditional fashion as far as approaching a new audience. Use this line to reach out to people that aren't currently reading comics. And, it's cool to not just the niche fan. I think that Vertigo in many ways has the potential to reach a broader audience than even the regular traditional comics are nowadays. There's a lot of this stuff I mentioned in an advertisement we did for our last episode about how American Vampire feels like serialized television storytelling. I think a lot of Vertigo material translates that way. And I think a lot of these big television programs that are having people tune in, like Walking Dead, The Following, things like that have people tuning in regularly. Shows like Lost, people who are fans of shows like Lost should be reading Vertigo material. I think that stuff, Why the Last Man, I would hand to anybody who liked Lost. I think there's a lot of great Vertigo material out there. Fables. Anybody who's reading watching the show Once Upon a Time should be reading Fables. There's kind of a tailor-made audience, and I guarantee you it's not doing the sales numbers that show is. So it needs to be, put in those hands. So I would love to see not just looking at the bookstore crowd, because I think, with Kindles and stuff like that they need to be reaching out to a digital crowd and doing freebies and showing, getting people in those crowds trying out some of these titles and seeing that they're just as rich as the novels that they're reading that fit these genres that are being produced by Vertigo. Vertigo needs to stop being the hidden child of DC and starts needing to be a cutting-edge brand that reaches out to a different audience and shows what comics can be. I'm not a big fan of diminishing superhero comics as saying, like, oh, I read more than superhero comics, so I'm better. I'm a fan of superhero comics. The truth of the matter is, though, there's a lot of people out there that read books that wouldn't go to a superhero movie because that's just not their cup of tea. But the Vertigo line might reach out to them. I think that they need to stop looking at that as a lesser line, stop, the competition between superhero comics and these type of comics, and start realizing the value of the rich catalog that they already have from Vertigo and the potential that Vertigo can continue to be for DC. That's just my own personal, editorial on it, because I need Vertigo in my reading library. I need this type of storytelling in there. I'd like to see more of it being published. It's why I knew you didn't put the category in there, because you're not as much of a Vertigo reader as I am. I thought we'd be remiss, though, if we did this episode and we didn't do some justice to Vertigo. And that's why I wanted to end with like a quick little segment on where I'd like to see Vertigo go from here, because I really like Vertigo. A lot of this stuff, I end up, and it's sad when I say this because I don't want to sound like stockpiling is a bad thing. I get a lot of Vertigo stuff because I just like reading it in trade and hardcover. I think the stuff works great that way. So I end up stockpiling some of it because it's, sometimes it's great to take 2 Vertigo hardcovers from a particular line like American Vampire and just read it that way. That stuff works really well. I am reading that single issues, but I collect it like I'm reading it in hardcover and trade. So I stockpile some of that stuff because I like it that way. I like reading it that way. I tend to support it monthly because I think that those sales numbers matter more, and I feel like my numbers count. But, I really think I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out how great that line is and end off our segment with that. I love doing this. I hope people listening to this really enjoyed this 2-parter that we did. It was a big undertaking for us. And Jim, I want to thank you for putting together the categories, because you did a lot of work behind the scenes to kind of organize this for us and to give us a kind of a consistent play-by-play in this whole thing. But, I figure as a 7-year anniversary 2-parter, this was a good way for us to kind of cap off the 7th year of the show. And, maybe that might be our theme from now on, on our show anniversary. Let's maybe do Raging Oscars then and just make that a regular thing. And make this the placement for it, because I feel this is a better spot for this episode instead of trying to rush it in at the end of the year, because I really liked doing this way. I had a lot more fun with it. But thank you, Jim, for all you did behind the scenes.
Cool.
Holy hole in a donut!
I want to shout out a quick Kickstarter, and I shouted this out on one of the previous episodes, but I want to shout out again because it's just a really important Kickstarter to me. This is for Crooks and Nannies by Jim Calafiore, and you'll remember his artwork from great work like Secret Six. He had Aquaman, he did Exiles over at Marvel. He's been on so many different titles. He did the Batman Gotham Underground, that miniseries. Just a really talented artist. He does this web strip called Crooks and Nannies that he does over on his website. And I encourage you to, in our show notes, I put links to the Kickstarter. It's also up on our website. Please click on it. Take a look at the cool, fun video that he has on there, but also go to the website. Crooks and Nannies is a free webcomic, and what he's doing with his Kickstarter, he's collecting it. It's putting in this really cool collected edition. Besides collecting the strips, though, there's all kinds of bonus material in there. I'm a big fan of this. Here's the cool thing, though. Even if you're just a fan of Crooks and Nannies just from the website, or you go over there and you have a chuckle and laugh, there's ways to support the webcomic and support this project. For as little as $1, you can support it. And then obviously as you get more into it, you'll actually wind up getting the book. But it depends on, like, if you are a webcomic fan where you're like, you know what, I really want to support this, but I just enjoy reading the webcomic. Please consider supporting Jim Calafiore on this. I'm a big fan of webcomics because creators take a huge risk. They put their artwork and they put their heart and soul into putting this thing on the internet. And it's a great opportunity for them to get exposure, to get that work out there, to get a creative idea out there, and hopefully to get some fan support and then get it published or, turn it into something that ends up being lucrative for them. This is a chance for us to help that out. And if Jim's work's touched you in any way, shape, or form, or maybe this is your first opportunity to see some of Jim's work, consider supporting this project. I would ask you also, just because he's a friend of the show, if you would not mind, if you have friends of yours who you know are fans of any of Jim's work or are fans of webcomics, please pass on this project to them. Let's get viral with this and get this thing promoted and published. He's very close to his goal. He's got a $12,000 goal, and it's almost there. As of the time when I'm recording this, it's past the $11,000 mark. It's only got 10 days left as of when I'm recording this, so I'd really like to see this get funded. This is a great chance for us as a community group to really get the word out about this project. So maybe it's not your thing, but you have friends of yours that hey, this would be your thing, or a comic shop that that would support this. Please help to get this viral. Let's get the word out for Jim and just get some support from the people who really would be behind this project. I think it's really great, and I really love our community for that. So thank you on any level for anything you do to support this project for Jim, because I just think it's a really cool project. I don't often get a chance to support a lot of these independent projects the way that I'd like to on the show. If there's anything, please consider our show Facebook group. Please consider our Google. Feel free to email me if you or anyone is involved in projects that you want to get promoted, because I think that's a really important part of the podcasting and web community, is really helping get the words out for all of us that are part of the community. So I just think this is a really cool project, and please do what you can to help support Jim and his efforts, because I'm a big fan of Crooks and Nannies. I'm a big fan of Jim's work. If you've heard my love for his Aquaman run, Secret Six on the show, obviously Batman Gotham Underground is just a really cool project for me as well. I'm a big Batman fan, and I love time travel stories, so Exiles was for me as well. So it's just a great chance to support Jim.
Hi, Steve Kerrigan here. I've been listening to your podcast for about the last 6 months, and I really enjoy it. Just wanted to thank you guys for all the work you put into it. And I wanted to know your opinion. There's been some sort of alarming news lately from DC with a lot of creative teams quitting titles, in some cases before their first issue even comes out. I was really excited to see Josh Fialkov take over Green Lantern Corps and Red Lanterns, but now he's left that, and the Action Comics creative team was a similar situation, and just wondering what you guys think is going on behind the scenes, and are you as alarmed by this as I am? Also, a lot of longtime listeners probably know the answer to this question, but I was wondering, why is it called Raging Bullets? What is the meaning of that title? Anyway, thanks again, and can't wait to hear the next podcast.
I'll start first with the name of Raging Bullets and where it came from. I wanted to do something when I started the show that played off of DC's history. And the DC Bullet, the old classic DC Bullet, is where the bullets part came from. And then the Raging part just came, with the theme of the show being to kind of pick every episode books that I was really interested in talking about. And that was really where it initially came from. The idea initially was to then have a friend read those same books and and see if they gained the same interest that I did or if they viewed them differently. And the show took on a different theme, but actually the raging theme, obviously, from the theme and the tone of the show just kind of always stuck around. But the bullets part is really kind of a subtle play off of the old classic DC bullet. So that's where it came from. As far as being alarmed, I don't know if alarmed is the right word for me. I get excited when there's creators that I'm really interested in that are coming on a comic book. So like you, the creative teams that were being announced sounded terrific to me, so I was really into the whole thing. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes to generate that. There's a team of books that are associated in both cases. There's a Superman family of books and the Green Lantern family of books. I don't know what generated that. If a lot of times when, those titles are handled so cohesively, with a end game that's kind of tied in, there might be a direction there that's limiting to certain writers who are coming on board. I don't know if that's on an editorial end or if it's on a team of writers end where there's just something not clicking or meshing or something like that. But I have no idea what went on behind the scenes. I'm not a big fan of depending, on, pointing fingers and blame, other than the fact that both creators you mentioned are people I really like. I follow their work, so I'm interested to see what they're going to be doing next, and hopefully they find projects that they're really excited about. And hopefully whatever happened wasn't something that was majorly traumatic or anything. I'm anxious to see who the creative teams are that are going to be taking over. I know there's been some announcements of who's going to be taking over on certain titles there, but I'm excited to see what those are going to be like, and hopefully the directions, because like the Superman family of books, there's a lot of big stuff coming down the line with them. With Scott Snyder's book coming on board, Greg Pak going to be on Superman, Batman. So when you take another big heavy hitter off of one of those titles like Action, like you're mentioning, it's disappointing to me because I was looking at, wow, creator after creator. Same thing with Green Lantern. That we were taking a heavy-hitting creative team off of the book, in the sense that they're leaving, they've done their run, and they're, moving on to new things. But they were putting on people who, I'm with you, I'm really excited to be reading. So that disappointing is probably a better word for it for me. I just hope that everybody lands somewhere that they're very happy with, and I hope that we wind up getting creators on those titles that can deliver the home run that we're used to on those books. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
How you doing, guys? This is Brandon calling out New Orleans. It's been a little while. Congratulations on 7 years off the bat. I'll probably have another voicemail soon. I know you guys are going to be doing a show on The Dark Knight. So, me being the Bat fan, I'm going to have to call in and give a couple of comments for the movie and definitely the book. But you guys are doing the Oscars right now. I just got through listening to the episode. Great episode. You guys are doing some great stuff. I can't express how awesome it is to listen to you guys every week. Y'all are the little bright spot I have when I'm closing my restaurant at night listening to your podcast. But I wanted to throw a couple of things out there for the Oscars. Right off the bat, the Bat fan, of course, Batman is the number one title of the year for me. Snyder is just, I said it a million times, the guy keeps surprising me and keeps getting better and better. Just Court of Owls is a great story. Death of the Family. Probably the reason I haven't called in a little while. I was broken up over Damien. I just went through this big emotional thing with Death of the Family, and then I got slapped in the head with Damien dying the very next week. Basically, it's been a hard couple of weeks in comics. I think I was out of it because of Damien's death in comics for 2 weeks. I couldn't pick up another book except for the Bat books for 2 whole weeks because I felt out of place reading anything, and I almost felt out of place reading them. Kind of funny to say that a character can take that big of a toll on you, but I got attached to reading Damien over the last 8 years, so much so that if I have another son, I convinced my wife to name him Damien, so that goes to show you the love I have for that character. But anyway, to go past that stuff again, that's that's the greatest for me this year. But surprisingly, I'd have to say my most surprising titles of the year are Earth 2 and Huntress and Power Girl. I'm a longtime Batman reader. I was a Marvel kid growing up, got more into DC in the later years, in the last couple of years especially. Batman was always my character. Him and Spider-Man were my number 2. I just dabbled more into Marvel growing up, so I didn't go too much into the JSA and all of that stuff, when I was a kid. So I had not, I guess, not much background on those characters, your Alan Scott and your Jay Garrick. I know of them and I know who they are, but I love the take that they're doing with this comic book. I'm so glad that they did it. You know, they introduced this multiverse, and the stories that you're getting out of this book are great. I mean, at 9 issues in, and the team isn't even there still, really, and it's just, you're getting some great character development. You know, Alan Scott, the journey he's been through so far has been awesome. Jay Garrick, we haven't gotten a lot of character development in him. I mean, we have, in the fact that you saw his mom, and you saw in the beginning his trouble with the girl and all of that stuff. But since he's gotten his powers, it's kind of, you know, they flossed over that. I'm sure we're going to have something big going on with him soon, where they're gonna bring back the girl and they're gonna bring back all that stuff. And I guess that those elements that they drop into that book and come back to, they're so good. And I think that's what makes me want to come back to it every week. They feel good. It's a good read. It's pretty much right up there. I have a hard trouble deciding what to read first when that and Batman rarely come out on the same week, because Batman's always my first book. But I do Earth 2 it's right up there now. I think I've called about it before and said that, but it's definitely I'd say it's my surprise hit of the year, right next to Huntress and Power Girl coming from it, because again, 2 characters where I didn't read much of before. I went into it just optimistic because I wanted to try something new out, and I figured, you know, it had a Bat family member in it with Huntress, you know, Helena, and it had a Superman character and Power Girl. So I was like, best of both worlds, the world's finest, basically. Let me check it out and see if it's going to be worth anything. And man, again, one of my top titles every month. I love reading it. It's a good fun read. That one actually, I would say, is the funnest of the reads I'm having right now. As far as just like lightheartedness and the adventure goes with Helena and Power Girl, their relationship it's so fun. It's just good. It's good reading. You know, the way they care about each other, the how they came to this earth and their struggle to get back to the, you know, where they come from. It's a good story. It's my surprise hit of the year, that and Earth 2, because like I said, I just did not expect to like those titles as much as I did. I'm glad I gave them a try because, you know, they're on there now. They're my titles every month. Those are my bad titles and my favorites. I've read the Justice League. I love my Justice League title. I'm glad JLA is coming out. Don't think that made last year, so we shouldn't talk about that one on the Oscars. But it's definitely, I can see a good future in that one in Jeff Jones. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to drop a couple of comments. Great job on the show, and keep it up.
Yeah, I think we're going to kind of in the future make the Raging Oscars our show anniversary thing. Every year in March, we'll do our Raging Oscars. And we're going to keep it pretty current. This one, we actually did include things up to the launch of Justice League of America. So there's a lot of current titles in there. We kind of took an overview look because last year when we did the Raging Oscars, we didn't have enough of the New 52 out as a whole entire line that we felt like, you know, should we be taking a look at the previous year? Should we be taking a look at the current stuff? You know, and when we said the previous year, meaning we had a whole different continuity that was out there. So we kind of did like an overview of the New 52 last year for our Raging Oscars. And this year we felt like we should really kind of evaluate the entire line so far, especially the books that we're missing that like were once around. You know, the books that we're really glad that they got experimental, they launched, they put them out there, they were really enjoyable reads. Want to make sure to let people know, hey, these are things that are out in trade now. You know, they're books that, you know, you might be interested in picking up, because I'm sure a lot of people who are looking through the New 52 now are every so often picking up a trade here and there of some titles that they missed, and hopefully some of the commentary on this will help point people in the direction of a title maybe they were considering reading that they want to kind of put up higher on their list. Also want to give a shout out to the fact that you called in with your own list. I think that's really cool. And I encourage anybody who would like to do that, not just now. If you want to do it throughout the year, just to kind of shout out books that you're enjoying, or, you know, a list that's kind of running through your head, go ahead and do that, because I think it's really great. I think it's helpful to people to hear different voices talking about the books that they're really digging. I really meant everything that I've said in the last 2 episodes of this. I really feel like the comic sales numbers on the top-selling comics right now, I just feel like they don't match the quality of the material. I think that there should be a lot more readership out there, and I think it's really helpful when we act as ambassadors for books that we're enjoying. I'm not saying, like sit there and pat on the back a book that's not your cup of tea, but really shout out these books that you're digging, that you want somebody to read, and let them know why. A lot of what Brandon did here is exactly what, to me, it's as a comic fan, this is the kind of conversation that I always enjoy having. I get excited to read about cool events in the book and to really talk about those things. I rarely get mad when I read comics, and start saying, oh man, what an awful issue. I want to go really talk about that. If it's an issue that's not grabbing me that much, I pretty much quickly move on because I'm excited about, like Brandon was mentioning, just how many books I've got in my list that are really knocking my socks off. So that's, the experience that I get from comics. And I really encourage everyone listening, if you're not getting that from your comic list, change things up a little bit. Start taking a couple of titles that maybe aren't grabbing you and make those kind of a flexible, let me try out some titles. Put that in your budget, so keep a couple slots open for some new things that maybe you've been considering trying, and get that pull list up to the one that hits a home run every week. Because to me, comics, unless you're doing it as a business, comics are really about the enjoyment of an experience. It's about escape. It's about, any literature medium is really about escaping from life's stresses and dramas. So that's really what, I hope that you get out of these books the same way that I do. And, hopefully get a chance to chain that up. But I really appreciate Brandon calling in. I want to say once again on this episode how much I've appreciated the support of our show fans. And thank you all for everything that you do for us.
You filthy criminals.
I want to quickly remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. I also want to remind everyone about our Facebook group, ragingbullets.com, Google+, Twitter. We're available on all those places. We have an amazing Facebook group community. The show website, I update that throughout the week, just letting you know what the status is on editing the show, when the show's going to be released. That also updates directly to Twitter. So if you're following me on Twitter, that's a great opportunity to get quick updates on where the show's going. So, please consider subscribing to our Twitter feed or popping by our website, whatever's the most convenient way for you to get news. And our Facebook group, I shout it out on the show regularly. I can't thank everyone enough for participating in the Facebook group. I love that it's a community that's kind of grown on its own. We keep getting new members all the time, and people are just having great, open, exciting comic book discussion. And we get great debates going there, and it's some wonderful opportunities to share our feelings about the current state of comics and comics and the comic community in general. If you have a podcast, blog, anything that you want shouted out on the show, that you'd like me to put links to on our website, if I'm missing something, I try to keep up on things, but occasionally I miss something that I should be linked to, please don't hesitate to email me at ragingbullets@gmail.com. I'm a big fan in cross-promotion. Feel free to post those things in our Facebook group. It's always open-ended. It doesn't just have to be DC related. We're all comic book fans here. We're fans of pop culture. So if you feel it's something that our listening audience might be interested in, please consider posting it up on those groups, because I'm a big fan of that kind of interaction, and I love being a part of that type of community. Actually, as of when I'm releasing this, tomorrow I'm going to be heading out to the Comic Geek Speak Super Show, and I'm really excited to be heading to another Comic Geek Speak fan outing. It's cgssupershow.com. If you hear this beforehand, or if you may be listening to this on the way there, or whatever, please make sure to seek me out and say hello. I'm going to be roaming the show floor on Saturday. I'm really excited to be a part of that fan community and seeing everybody. To me, it's a gathering of friends. I've always really enjoyed that convention, and I'm looking forward to running into anybody I can and chatting there. So hopefully I'll run into some of you. If not, I'm hoping this year that I will run into you somewhere. I'm for sure going to the Mid-Ohio Con, the Wizard World Mid-Ohio Con. I always go there. That's a great, I live in Ohio, so that is, my big fan gathering that I'm going to. I will update the show if there's anywhere else that I'm going to be hitting this year, but those are for sure the two on my list that I'm going to be hitting. So looking forward to seeing anybody at any of those conventions. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to do our next Pop Culture and Whatnot. We haven't had a chance with our schedule to do another one, and we decided for that one to be a great time, now that we did this big kind of overview of all of DC Comics, it'd be great to kind of do one of our Pop Culture and Whatnots and talk about two things that are near and dear to us, and probably to most of you out there. You and I have had a very different relationship over the years with Star Wars and Star Trek. So we thought it'd be kind of fun to do a casual 1 hour-ish chat and it's a little bit more if it goes there, of Star Wars versus Star Trek. What our history is with the characters and the concept and the universe, both in the films and television shows and outside of them, how we like the current stuff that's going on with them, and the direction they're going in, and what our hopes are for all of that. So we thought it'd be kind of a fun little break from our normal content to be able to talk about these, figuring that most of our audience would be interested in that as well. So we're going to talk about that our next episode. So we will see you then.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sidelines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. Talking about Hawkman.